Hi, it's Kamon Reynolds. Welcome to tonight's live chat. We have a lot of things going on and a lot to talk about. Thankful that you have joined us tonight. Before we get started in the questions and answers, I'd like to make a couple announcements and also bring some attention to some things that little saddened about. One of them is Jason Chrisman. He is a YouTube beekeeper, and his YouTube channel was hacked. I believe he had 50,000 subscribers, and there's nuts everywhere apparently that are looking to get a YouTube channel. And unfortunately, they were able to get access to his. So I'm going to have Laurel leave a link in the chat box where if you were a subscriber of Jason Chrisman or you'd like to see another style of beekeeping, he's in Ohio. Maybe that's more useful to where you're at. Then look at that link below and you'll see Jason Chrisman's YouTube channel on honeybees and more. All right. Let's see. Oh, next week, big announcement. October the 2nd at 7 p.m. Central. I'm going to have a special guest. It's going to be, let's see if I can get this right, Etienne Tardif. I believe that's how it's pronounced, but probably not. He beekeeps in the Yukon. It's going to take what we're doing in this live chat on the questions and answers and talking about winter preparation, and it's going to take it a big step further because overwintering in the Yukon region of the world, that's some intense winter beekeeping. And he has all kinds of data and charts, but he presents it in a way that's not like, oh, your eyes, just glaze over from all the information data. It's very practical. And I'm excited that he's going to be on. That's October the 2nd. And that is 7 p.m. Central. We'll be talking to him and asking questions. So that's going to be a lot of fun. All right. People are already resubbing to Jason Christmas channel. So JC's Bees, good deal. Ryan's asking, how are your wax dip boxes holding up? Besides just a little bit of sun wearing as far as like a changing the tint of the color of the box, I can't tell a difference. They look fantastic. I love it. I hope to never paint again unless it's just for the fun of it. Hey, Mark, thanks for coming on tonight and for donating to what we do and being a part of the beekeeping that we are doing here and trying to help others with as well. A lot of people already coming in. So, great night of college football if you're into that kind of thing. Got a couple more announcements, then I'll get more into questions and answers. So, yes, NTN Tardif will be October the 2nd, 7 p.m. Central. So, coming up in a week and do a great presentation on insulation, upper ventilation, what he finds really keeps his bees healthy and alive through their crazy hard winters up in the Yukon. And I really like the information. It's very practical. I've seen where he said that he gets like a 90% overwintering rate up there, and has had some years better than that. That's fantastic. So, going to be a lot of good information there. I'm excited to hear him speak and ask him questions myself. One thing I wanted to mention, I talked to Ricky Rourke, who does the horizontal hive, the one that I use out there in my bee videos. Those bees are doing fantastic. I'll be releasing the end result on the Apo guard, doing it properly, and hopefully we'll get a good wash and on that follow up after the treatment. And hopefully those bees will be good. They look fantastic. And he is doing $100 discount for our conference. So it's a limited availability, though. He's not going to be able to bring like dozens of these, long highs that take up a lot of room. So you can go to horizontalbees.com if you're interested in getting a horizontal hive and you get a $100 discount at the conference only. And Laurel's going to be leaving a link for that as well. All right. Also, update on the conference. The honey show is a go. So I'm excited about that. We have several categories. I will be talking about that more here in just a second. Laurel's going to leave a link down below and a link also down below if you would like to come to the conference. So lots of links early on in the video. Yeah, just go ahead and leave one down below for the conference registration and also one for the honey show. And you can look at the rules. I'm going to have it a little bit. This is the rough draft version. Accurate. It's exactly what we're going to be doing, but I'm going to have it a little bit fancier page at the conference and prior to that. So if you have any questions on the honey show, you can hit me with that here in just a bit. All right, let's get to some questions and answers. Harry's got one question. How many gallons of sugar syrup approximately do the bees eat during the fall season? Well, depends on if your bees are producing some fall nectar or not. And it depends on the year. I have some years where we make too much fall honey and it actually could be taken. Those are rare though. I'd say maybe 1 out of 5 at the best, and 4, maybe 1 out of 4. Colonies have to be really strong. And typically for someone in my area, because we don't have really strong summers here, we have no flow in July and late June, no flow in August, really to speak of. So the bees naturally drop population. So it's hard to get a big surplus honey crop when the bees have naturally declined over that period. And the fall flow is very short. Now, as far as feeding them goes, get into your hives right now. Many beekeepers are already getting frosts. So that means you need to be getting to your hives. There's not a whole lot of nectar and pollen that comes after you starting to get frost. So if you're getting frost or getting close to it, get in there. I'm already getting into hives. Feed them. Feed them now. Get to it early while it's still warm. And if it's a good 8 to 10 frames of bees, I'd like to see at least 60 pounds on there. And if it's a 5 frame nuke, it can be less than that. But we definitely want to make sure there are plenty of food stores for those colonies. And we want to make sure that they can get the sugar syrup in and ripen it up really good. But how many gallons of sugar syrup? A good colony right now is going to probably need, if they have nothing hardly to speak of, goodness, 8 gallons of 2 to 1, 7, 9, depending on the size of the colony and how much they have to go with it. Hopefully, a fall flow will help supplement a lot of that. And hey, tomorrow is the giveaway for the Laura Bee vaporizer. So if you left a comment in that video, be watching out for that video to surface. Hey, the Happy Camper's asking about any updates on the discounts for the conference. I need to get deep supers, frames, and foundation, and of course, jars. I've been talking to Premier Foundation, Man Lake, and several of these companies. They're working on it. I guess they're really busy right now. I have assurances, and they've told me what they're going to do. As far as do I have any specifics? Not a whole lot at this point. I do have some. I'm piecing them together. I do know that there's going to be a big discount on loaded frames and foundation. And right now, you should be able to call Man Lake up and mention the Hive Life Conference. And if it's going to be picked up there, and get a 10% discount. But you may not want to do that on your frames and foundation just yet, because on that, they're planning on having a bigger discount than just the 10%. Let's see. Yeah, what happened to JC Matthew was it's just disgusting. It's a lot of work doing the bees and then do the videos. And for so many years, it's really disgusting that somebody would take the time to hijack a channel. I say we, Laurel has put a lot of work in making sure that we have double and triple and as much as we can beefed up the security on our YouTube channels, passwords, and everything else, because there are always people out there just looking to create chaos. But yes, if you were a subscriber of JC's Bees, please do that. Hey, Poland, hope you're doing good there, Bee Lord. I bet you guys are not getting pretty cold this time of the year. Let's see here. Now, I'm not sure I can get this name right. I'm going to go Steinthal. Steinthal. Thank you so much for the $20 donation. I'm not sure I've seen you on here before. I could be wrong. If you have any questions, definitely leave it below. And I want to say to Jeff Upton, one of our frequent guys that comes on here and is contributing in a lot of ways. He'll be at the conference. Woo Pig Squeal beat Texas A&M tonight. So congratulations, Arkansas fans. Hi-Fi in Kentucky says, I am really confused. Just came from one of my bee yards that has 7 hives, over easily 40 acres that look like a carpet of wingstem, and they are crazy light on honey. How is this possible? Hank, I honestly don't know. I was talking to Rick Sutton, one of our speakers at the event, and he will also be the lead honey judge. And he was mentioning the same thing. We've got a great crop down here. I think it's because we are having such a cool year. It's actually too cool. That I don't know. It could be other things, but there's plenty of moisture in the ground. There has been all summer. The plants look extremely well developed. I just think the temperatures are just getting too cool, and I really don't know. He's saying the same thing, that there's blooms, but they're just not bringing in a lot. And the fall flow is just so fickle. In the springtime, you can lose, black locust, and then you can lose tulip poplar, and you can still get blackberry blossom, and you can get privet or honeysuckle bush or several other things, clover that can contribute. But in the fall flow, you really only have a couple of plants, at least in my area, that really contribute to the nectar production. And if you lose one or two of those things, and it's such a short window too, it usually covers both of them up. So, anyways, I'm seeing very similar things here. It's not a complete dearth or anything like that, but we're definitely not plugging out boxes or anything like that. Hey, Cayman in Kentucky, when should I start 2-to-1 feeding? It's best to wait just a little bit longer. You don't have to, though. Um, if the hives are in your yard and you're able to micromanage them really good, then just feed them 1-to-1. Maybe you get a little bit thicker, but when you feed them thinner syrup, they're able to impart more of the characteristics that they want into the syrup. They're able to put more time into it, and I believe create a better winter feed. There's been some research on this, so that's one of the reasons why I went away from just feeding like Pro Sweet or a syrup thick and straight. It's also more stimulating, and right now you're still gearing up for that winter cluster. And so anything that we can do to stimulate the bees to get a little bit bigger of a winter cluster is a good idea. But as far as when you should start feeding 2-to-1, I'd say probably here in the next 3 weeks. Yeah, probably the next 3 weeks. And you can feed in my area with a bucket feeder, late November, early December, 2-to-1. A lot of people don't recommend it. It's better not to wait that long. Get that feed on there as soon as possible. All right. We have one of our sponsors on tonight, Hat Bee Acres, and we really appreciate them. And they will be at the conference as well, selling their wares, and looking forward to meeting them again. Let's see here. The Happy Camper. Thank you, Happy Camper, very much. All right, getting down there. Getting down. All right, hey, Yvonne, another Kentucky beekeeper. I got into both my hives today, and they don't have any honey. And I didn't take any this year. Get that feed on them. I know it's crazy. It's like, oh my goodness, feeding all the time. But if they're really light, just go ahead and feed it a little bit thicker. It I don't know why. I mean, I can't. I was guessing this was going to be a great fall flow, and I right now I'm saying that it's kind of it's not the worst fall flow. It's definitely not a great fall flow. I don't know why. How do you polish your frame before giving it to your breeder queen? As far as prepping the frame that she's going to lay in, or do I prep the JZ BZ or any wax cups before I graft them? Some people will take the cups and they'll put them in there for a day beforehand and let the bees clean them. Excuse me, I'm not one of those guys. I just go ahead and use them right out of the bag, and I have great success with that. So I'm going to assume that you're thinking the frame that I'm trying to get the queen to lay in. And what I like to do, so I've got a breeder queen right now, courtesy of Shabu Raj, who is a AI fella down in Columbia, Tennessee, and he does a really great job making some AI queens. Bob Benny and I both have gotten some of his AI breeders. Bob got the more Caucasian type. I went the Carney route, and I'm anxious to hear what Bob has to say next year about his Caucasians from Shabu. And but as far as that goes, I like to keep those breeder queens in small little colonies, so like 5 frame, 6 frames, and give them plenty of space and room. Because in spring we don't want them to swarm. Now I've got a mark, I believe it's 31 on this queen. I need to do a video on it. Really, it's my first AI inseminated queen ever, and I'm pretty excited to breed some from it. But as far as getting the combs ready, I drop them in there. I cannot remember exactly what the timing has to be, but I don't get super fancy either. I drop them in there like 2 frames a couple days before I want to graft, and I think come back in 3 or 4 days after I drop the frames. I don't get real fancy. I didn't raise a lot of queens this year, just about 200 ish. Let's see here. Is the conference full yet? It's not full yet, but it's getting really close. We were hoping to max out at around. Well, we were hoping to get about 500 people, and we've already surpassed that by almost 100. So we're knocking on the door of 600 people, max capacity. Could probably go 750 people. The venue's quite large. We could go fuller than that, but we're not going to, and that's because we want to have plenty of room for everything and everyone, just in case we have to spread out as well. We have plenty of room to, even if we have to do 50% capacity, we have plenty of room for that. And also, this is only our second conference, and we've got a lot of good things in store, but we don't want to grow too quick and not be able to do it well. So that's where we're stopping for. All right, getting down further on down. Hey, Cayman, I've got a massive removal tomorrow. They have been in the house since 2003. I'm going to throw them an Apame hive and feed them. Yes, sir. Feed them and feed them, feed them. Um, been in a house since 2003. It's this is pretty late in the year. I don't know where you're at. So in some locations it'd be cool, but yeah, it's going to be a little bit interesting to if I was doing a cutout right now, I'd be a little concerned. Maybe if you have a big colony, you can spare a frame of brood from and give them some capped brood to kind of help them out. That might do them a big favor. All right. Trying to catch back up on some of these questions. And this computer keeps jumping around on me. Cheers from Australia. All right, East Tennessee. Let me get back to some of these notifications. So I think Laurel is already. Hey, Laurel, are you available? Maybe not. All right. We'll just get back to more questions. So, for those of you who didn't see it early when I first came on, October 2nd, 7 p.m. Central Time, we are going to have a guest on a live chat next week, and it's going to be great. Laurel, did you happen to post about the honey show? Okay. Laurel's going to post it one more time, and we'll post it in other places as well, so you'll be able to see it. The honey show rules and regs and all that kind of stuff. She's going to post down there if you are coming to the conference and want to be a part of the honey show. We're going to have several different categories. So if you want to get real fancy with the whole, standard honey show where they're measuring everything from you're using a polariscope to see how many crystals are in there, how clear the honey is, how clear the jar is, how well it's presented. It gets pretty fancy with that kind of stuff. So there will be several categories in that. There will also be a 4x4 comb honey category, a chunk comb honey. Everything will be in glass besides the 4x4 chunk, not chunk comb, the comb honey. The chunk and liquid will all be in 1 pound glass jars. Everything will need to be in glass. It'll need to be 1 pound, except the black jar category. The black jar is a category for those who don't want to spend all the time with the fancy stuff and just bring their honey. And you can bring as small as a jar as like 4 ounces, and as big of a jar as 1 pound. It doesn't really matter on the jar size. You want to bring a 5 pound jar of honey and leave it for Jimmy, he'll eat all of it. But it's taste only, so it'll need to be a painted black jar. And the only thing that they do is the judges will taste it and then rate the score based upon that. So that'll be. Hmm. We may do a honey swap. I'm not sure at this point. I may have somebody orchestrate that. I definitely will have to talk to Andrea about that. Um, a lot of people are already working on this conference. It's not just Laurel and I. We're starting to bring some people in, and that's helping us get a whole lot more done. I'd like to say a big thank you to Andrea, who Andrea Porter. She's a Tennessee beekeeper, and she's doing a wonderful job helping us with good ideas and planning some things out and bringing some new ideas to the conference, which I think are going to be really good. Have a seed swap for honey flowers. It's not a bad idea. Hello from Albania. All right. Well, thanks for letting us know you're watching from Albania. Really appreciate you watching. I hope that we help you out a little bit. I would love to see some Albanian YouTube videos. So if you have any, you ought to send me a link. All right. Which is better, a frame feeder or a top feeder? I have a top feeder. I'm noticing a lot of condensation. Good question, Rebecca. Feeders is one of those things where there's definitely no such thing as a perfect feeder. There's a lot of variables. I really like having frame feeders and I like having bucket feeders both because where the frame feeder is weak, the bucket feeder does really well. And where the bucket feeder is poor, the frame feeder does really good. The nice thing about a frame feeder is it just sits there in the hive. You don't have to have a hole drilled in your lid. Or if you're talking about a top feeder that goes in between your lid and your box, that's a whole nother piece of equipment that you have to yank on and put on all the time. You can yank it off during the honey flow because you don't need it. But then you'll have to put it back on later. The other problem with having top feeders is like with a bucket feeder that sits on top of the hive, it can get blown off in the wind if the bees don't glue it down. Raccoons love to haul bucket feeders and jar feeders off and lick the syrup out of them. It's a big problem. We had to do some raccoon control this year, and they're smart enough to pull the plugs out of them and all kinds of stuff. I do like the bucket feeders for when it's getting cold, though. A little condensation this time of the year shouldn't hurt. Get that feed on and get it quick. The condensation will be a problem when the bees can't move around and get in and out of the hive at all. So we definitely want to, and they still need some condensation in that winter cluster. Places like mine, it's humid all, even in the wintertime, it's still pretty moist outside, all the mud and everything. But top feeders work really good. The problem with frame feeders is a lot of times if it's really cold and the syrup gets cold in that frame feeder because they abandoned that, then they won't take it very quickly or they even could drown in it because if they fall into it where they normally could, if it was warm syrup, just go right out of it, no problem. It might lower their body temperature too much by the time they're able to get out of it and they just get too weak. The bee's body has to stay warm. So there's pros and cons to both of them. Let's see. Yeah, well, Happy Acres. So are you talking about Rick Sutton? Yeah, he's done a lot of competitions. He's a really good beekeeper too. I'm excited to have Rick there this year. Rick teaches and talks very just common sense beekeeping. There's days that he scratches his head and wonders what's going on like the rest of us. So I'm excited for him to be there. Michael says he watched the date video, so now he knows what Laurel looks like and who swings the YouTube ban axe. Yep. Don't be fooled by that cute face. When it comes to banning people on YouTube, Laurel's brutal. All right. Is anything planned for Thursday evening before the conference starts? We're looking into it. I don't know yet. We may just have we might just have a dinner or something like that. I don't know. The venue, we're probably not going to do anything at the venue. Now, Friday night, we likely are going to have late that evening a 1 hour bluegrass show. I've got the band lined up. They're awesome. They're really awesome. I'll actually be playing with them a little bit, and it'll be after the conference is over. Should be plenty of time for folks to get dinner. And then if they want to come back and just talk bees, the room's massive, so you can be talking bees in one corner and music in the other, or sit down and throw tomatoes at the band. I might do that myself. Um, what percentage of water should be in the honey for long storage and good crystallization? We if you're wanting crystallization, Alexander, I don't know exactly what is ideal, and of course, it really, in my mind, I would think the lower the moisture content, the more aggressively it would want to crystallize because it's so saturated, so to speak, with that sugar derived from those natural nectars. However, it really depends on your honey. Some honeys are really good about crystallizing, some of them are really poor. I live in an area where our honey will crystallize, but it takes many months for our honey to crystallize on its own. And that's in an ideal conditions in about 60-degree, 55-degree temperatures. As far as moisture content, we definitely don't want anything really above, 18.2. Honestly, it's best not to have our honey above 18% water content. You can get away with it, and some honeys can handle it better than others, but ideally, honey should be 18 or below. It makes a better honey and prevents fermentation. But I really am not an expert when it comes to creamed honey, crystallized honey, any of that stuff. Roy Fisher, thanks so much, Roy. I appreciate it very much. If you have any questions, hit me with it. Randy saying, Cayman, would you feed pollen patties right now or wait till January or February? Hey, Randy, I'm feeding pollen patties right now. We have some pollen coming in, but we're putting on small patties on. It doesn't matter. We've got some great looking colonies. They're healthy, but we want them just to stay big, stay healthy. And there's some little colonies we're trying to ensure that they take it to the next level. We had a ton of rain last week. It rained for like 5 days straight, and even though things could have bloomed, they bees couldn't get out to them. So throwing pollen patties during that time makes a big difference in keeping that colony going forward. We want big clusters. Now, I cut the pollen patty usage off in third, fourth week of October. I don't try to get my bees to rear brood in November here or December, and then we'll start feeding late January, early February, right when maple blooms. When you have pollen coming in, even if it's just a little bit, the pollen patty really does well. But if it's winter time, December, and they'll eat it. The big colonies will go through it. It doesn't hardly do anything. The bees aren't ready to rear brood. They don't want to rear brood, and it doesn't work very good. So I pick and choose when to feed. And right now we are trying to feed to make the biggest winter healthiest clusters that we possibly can. Cayman, what would you say is the best thing you've added to your beekeeping toolbox this year? Well, last season I really enjoyed the pollen trap as far as a new gadget as far as tools go, but as far as what's helped me out the most, the new extraction lines helped me save so much time. That's basically where we're at right now with our business, is what can give us more time back. And definitely the extraction line has been the best thing for me. As far as new stuff, we haven't changed a whole. Yeah, Laurel's like me too. That extraction line is awesome. Yes. It's good when your wife is okay with you dropping over $10,000 on an extraction line and she's happy about it. I'm very fortunate. It does work really good. I actually was talking to Cowan the other day, and they can't come to our conference this year due to prior engagements, but they are very interested in being at a conference next year. So I'm hoping to have a Cowan line at our conference in 2023. and they're excited about our conference and how it's growing. That makes two of us. But as far as new tools, I think the most exciting thing to me this year is what we've learned through the experimental yard, which I haven't been able to share with you all yet. I apologize. We're working on it. And also what I've learned through other tests and experiments that we've done this year. I really feel like my Varroa management has gone higher, and I feel like the information that we're going to be able to share soon is going to be really helpful. And I'm super excited about next season. So Varroa is the number one problem, and I feel like we're getting a better grasp on it. So that's always a big plus. Dan Schneider, getting cold in Wisconsin. What's going down there? Well, it's getting cool, and we're so thankful. I August was brutal. I didn't like it very much, and now it's fall weather, baby. This is my favorite season. Absolutely. Well, spring's pretty awesome too. I like that honey flow. I'm in Tennessee. Is upper venting during winter a good idea? Good question, Emily. If you didn't see before, I'm going to answer your question with my opinion. Excuse me. But we are next week. We're going to have a fellow that I think will be able to answer your question way better than I can. Entian Tardif. He is up in the Yukon. He has insulated hives. He's done wooden hives. He's done tests on them. He has thermal scans. I mean, all kinds of really cool data. He deals with upper ventilation and insulation, and he shows you the comparisons on heat dispersal inside the boxes and the cluster. And he really does a good job presenting the information that doesn't fly over your head. So I'm anxious to talk to him. That's October 2nd, 7 p.m. Central. And it's going to be a wonderful discussion. I'm excited to learn about it. Now, as far as upper ventilation here in Tennessee, I have used upper ventilation and had great success. And I have not used upper ventilation and had great success. Confusing, isn't it? Down here, I really feel like the most important thing is getting a healthy cluster. We don't have rough winters at all, but you have to have bees in good shape. And our summers and sometimes our fall flows are a little rough on our colonies. So I think it would be better to have a little bit of upper ventilation, probably for you. That way you can kind of just check that off the list of things you don't have to worry about. However, most of my colonies every year are run without any ventilation up top. I don't feel like it's a necessity at all. My opinion, and I'm curious to see what his opinion is on this because, again, we live in a mild area here. So our bees get cleansing flights basically every month of the year, and many times in February, typically, in March, definitely for sure, and usually at least once or twice in January, and definitely in December. So our bees really don't go through a serious winter at all. And they're able to get some warm days and they'll suck up and get rid of some of that moisture, that condensation up there. So it's not as big of a deal. So I really, if it's a good, healthy cluster, I've never seen a big, healthy cluster in any of my hives die of too much moisture in the hive, short of having a leaky roof where it rained into it all winter long. But I've never seen a moisture problem just from the cluster of the bees and lack of upper ventilation. I've never seen that before. But just to be safe, maybe put one up in there. Let's see. All right. Alabama's already up 35-0. Woo. Well, that's kind of why I'm doing a live chat instead of watching the Bama game, Don. It's just one of those games. Speaking of which, roll tide. Don, to answer your question earlier, um, hotels, there are some discounts. I am so sorry we haven't posted those yet. I'm serious when I say that I spend probably 3 to 4 hours a day on the conference right now. It is taking that much work, and then Laurel does a lot too, and it's good. I'm not complaining, but I'm behind a little bit. We're still this. We started the idea of a conference in October of last year, and so we haven't even had a year to really fully learn the ropes. So I'm still trying to grind my way up to a plateau, but we will get it to you and soon. Of course, coffee. Always take some coffee. Happy wife, happy life. That is the key to beekeeping and everything else, for sure. All right. Still bringing in pollen in New York City, dark honey, still 3 or 4 boxes. Too many bees, can't condense yet. Wow, that's a great thing to have. Wayne Watson, hey Cayman, no luck with Apivar this year. So tomorrow I'm going to put Apigard on starting tomorrow. Just wondering, can you or can you not feed with Apigard? I'd seen you didn't, and Bob did. Okay, so one thing you have to kind of take, especially when I'm doing treatment videos and things that involve legal stuff, you sometimes you have to read in between the lines, and I apologize for that. I just try not to. I can't make anybody happy when it comes to that kind of stuff because if I tell people my opinion, the if it's contradictory to the legal stuff, then someone's going to jump on me for that. What I'm saying is, you can feed with Apigard. The folks that sell you the product do want you to follow the label and not do that. This isn't really falling into like using an off-label treatment or anything like that. However, I don't want someone to use this and their hive get robbed out because they fed and watched my video, and then like, came and my hive got robbed out because I fed during Apigard because you said that you could and all that kind of stuff. But you can feed with Apigard. I've done it several times, and well, goodness, I did it with the experimental yard. I've got it. I got some clips of it. I haven't got it in a formatted video yet, but when we were using the Apigard, we had some feed on them that we put, and yeah, they all seem to be fine with it. And I know Bob does it too. So if they need feed, give it to them. Maybe reduce the entrances though, if you haven't already, Wayne. I hate to hear that about Apivar, but I have heard that dozens of times this year, many times. Apivar is just not knocking them backwards. It's keeping them at the same level, or sometimes they're even growing still with the Apivar in there. Mm. Hey, Cayman, we're more in the mountains. Wondering what type of insulation you use. I don't really use a lot. I've used those foamy things that Ian does. I tried several of those out. They have pros and cons. They're not very insulative. I've also used some R5 boards. I really like those. I am contemplating actually using a foam board like that on every one of my hives. Is it necessary? Absolutely not. I've gone over 15 years without using anything like that. But is it helpful? I really think it is. But that's one of the reasons why I invited Mr. Tardif next week to come on and give us some really good insight on insulation because he'll have some that's on polystyrene hives. He has information on data with just having the insulation with the under the lid and just kind of seeing what are the differences up there because he's such an extreme area, so that's really important. I think to get information from that because our bees don't go through that. But I think the R5, if you're going to if you want to insulate a hive, at least have an R5 foam board underneath that lid. You'll need to paint it, or ants or bees will chew through it. So paint it really well, and you can go R10. I know some guys that do that in the South, and they say they have phenomenal results. Even in summertime, the bees don't beard half as much because you just don't get the heat coming through the lids at all, and it actually helps them regulate the hive temperature, which makes sense. I mean, it's really no different than your house. If your house is well insulated, you don't have leaks in your windows, you're going to burn less energy. For the bees, their energy comes from honey or sugar syrup that you fed them. So, and the less that they have to burn through, if there's roughage in your fall feed or anything, it's just less stress. Less work equals less stress. So this is something, do you have to have it? I don't think so. But could it be advantageous? Yeah, I think it could be. And I'm excited to see what his information is going to show us. Okay, so Duke says one more time. I must have missed the other ones. Hey, Cayman, my bees ate all of their honey, or capped honey. I'm a first year beekeeper. Help. Mix up some sugar syrup and feed, 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 and make thick feed if they are really out of it. 2 to 1 makes a lot more poundage than 1 to 1 does. You don't have to go quite 2 to 1. It's actually easier to mix if you go like mm, just a little bit less. So if you have 2 pounds of sugar to 1 pound of water, maybe do 1 3/4 of a pound of sugar and then do 1 pound of water and get that water really hot. You can boil the water and then pour the sugar into it and mix it up. Some people are like, oh, you don't do that, you'll get HMF. It doesn't stay hot enough long enough to cause any HMF problems at all if you do it like that. HMF happens from long-term heat exposure, and as soon as that sugar hits that, it's going to be fine. It's going to cool down. You really want to get that mixed in really good, but you need to feed some. If they have nothing this time of the year, 2 to 1 is hard to mix. The reason I say maybe not 2 to 1 is if you're using granulated sugar, it's hard to mix 2 to 1, especially if you have heavy water. Heavy water being water that has a lot of mineral content in it. In some places of the world, they have to have water softeners for it. When I was a kid up in Indiana, we had to have those all the time. Down here, we just drink spraying water, and we're good for it. and But yeah, it can be hard to do 2 to 1 with granulated sugar. Now, 2 to 1 with syrup like Pro Sweet or sucrose, very, very easy to mix. Just warm the water up and mix the syrup into the right ratio, and you're golden. That's why I like syrup so much. It's so much easier to mix and get the thickness. The happy camper. All right, so he fed with Apagard on, no issues noted. That's fantastic. The I can give you all a little sneak peek on the experimental yard. We've had really good results. The Apagard did really good, and I'm not super shocked, but it still didn't do as good as it needed to, and I think that's probably the well, I'll save that for the end. But Apagard's a good product. We've used it for many, many years. It's not the perfect product, but it's one of the better ones, and but it needs some help, just like all of the treatments do. A lot depends on location and how many mites you produce. But I'm excited. We've got a lot of Varroa information coming. Thanks, Lee Hart. I really appreciate the encouragement very much. I do. All right. New mated queens and 5 frame nuke. What's needed to get ready for Tennessee winter? Have resources available, 10 hives at my hands. All right. So if you have a lot of little colonies like that, they're probably not going to grow too much out of that before winter time. You need to get some pollen patties in there. I don't care if there's plenty of pollen coming in. You need to help them get as big as they can. A little insulation could help those little hives. Make sure they have plenty of feed. It's a little bit tricky though. You don't A 5 frame nuke can plug out pretty quickly. So maybe I don't know. You know the conditions of the hive better than I do, but it's all a feeding game right now. And hopefully you have a young queen in there. It sounds like you do. Hopefully they're ready to get to laying hard and fast. All right, Chip. Hey, Chip, how you doing? I have to move my hives 200 miles. Okay, big move. Do you have a video on moving hives that far? Link, advice? Okay, that's a tricky one right there. Always, when moving bees, the biggest concern that I have is ventilation and overheating. Moving bees stinks. I've never enjoyed moving bees. It's never happened before. Gr- there's never been a great experience moving bees. And that being said, this time of the year, they should be fairly cool. I can't remember where you're at, Chip. I apologize. I know you've told me. Ventilation. Maybe you can get a net. I prefer. I mean, you're going to lose some foragers if you do that, but they need plenty of ventilation. Honestly, if we're talking like double deeps, run a ratchet strap across the top so they can't slide off of each other. The lid, bottom board, everything is together. and have two people to lift them up. And what I would do is get you some eighth inch hardware cloth, and it's eighth of an inch. Bees can't get out of it. Staple that across the entrance, block every hole, but make sure they have that full entrance. And if possible, I recommend that you do this. Provide upper ventilation as well, and you can just provide like a notched bit of insulation, ventilation, and then put a little hardware screen over that. You really want that air circulation. If it's a really strong plugged hive, then give them an extra box on top, even if it's empty with no frames. They need to be able to get some air movement through that colony. It doesn't matter if it's 50 degrees outside. If they're really full of bees, they'll overheat in there, and you don't want to lose brood this time of the year. You may lose some forager bees, but the forager bees are fixing to die anyways. Once they get into the winter mode, all the old bees they're done. They get out of the colony and they're done. So just secure them down really good after that. Make sure they have plenty of ventilation. Don't have the entrances, if it's really cold, don't have the entrances facing to where the wind's rushing right into it either, especially if they're weak colonies. So maybe have the entrances going away from the wind. I guess that's probably all I can think of. All right. I want to say a big thank you to Jim Ladd again. Appreciate it, Jim. If you have any questions, hit me with it. And nice microphone. I remember that. You got that microphone. I can't even think of the word of it. Oh, Natalie's on. Uh-oh. I better be careful what I say. Natalie's going to be at the conference, and boy, I'm excited. We got a lot of young people signed up this year. Yeah, exactly, exactly. Yeah, she's got a whole class prepared for us. No, but no, she's going to be helping out quite a bit, and we really appreciate her involvement and all young people that are involved with beekeeping. It makes me really excited because I want them to get to work, to help me out a little bit. Um, but seriously, Natalie's already doing stuff that I wasn't even into bees at her age. So it's exciting to see young people doing aggressive things in beekeeping at a young age, because I know that the potential is so great and we all need it. Regeneration at its finest. Now I'm in trouble with Natalie, I'm pretty sure. I'll pay for it. Yeah, there you are, one to one. We used Apagard this year with good results as well. We did have two buckets that came crystallized, and Man Lake swapped them out for us. Did anyone else have issues like that? Good comment, Natalie. I appreciate that one very much. So Apagard, Man Lake, and some of these other companies are not always good because a lot of these big companies have gotten away from beekeeping themselves. They don't know how to take care of things, and they're storing, some of them are storing these products in too hot of an environment. And if you leave your Apagard, or if they leave the Apagard that you buy in a hot building for long periods of time, or areas that have a lot of fluctuation in temperatures, the thymol crystals are going to come out of the gel suspension. And the problem with that is it's not going to treat your colony properly. You're going to get a probably really strong surge of thymol, which could cause issues with your colony. And then you're not going to get that extended long release kill with that Apagard. So always be mindful of that. Store your Apagard in a room temperature, or, I've got mine in like a basement setting. It does fine in that too. But don't let it get too hot. Big fluctuation. Same with formic acid. And that's why a lot of people like Formic Pro. It's more shelf stable than the Mitaway Quick Strips. But yeah, that's a great comment, Natalie. One thing you have to watch out for with these treatments, and make sure you pay attention to the expiration dates on them as well. I'm glad you had good results, Natalie, and saw your last video. Looking forward to the next one. All right. So Alexander says, what percentage of water should be in the honey for long storage and good crystallization? So, yeah, honestly, I prefer to see my honey in like the 16.5 to 17% range. No, I really don't like it below 16%. I really prefer it not to be really below 16.5. But I definitely don't want it 18 or over 18%. So really the sweet spot for me is between 16.5% and 18% at the highest. I like 17. It's 17 is a nice number. Hey Jim, no problem. We really appreciate you and supporting us and everything. Beekeeping is quite a lot more complicated than a lot of agricultural endeavors, but I think working as a collective, as a hive mind, we can help all of our new beekeepers out. And I'm so excited. We have so many good people on YouTube. What are you going to show me, Laurel? All right, so that's for Carolina. Oh, does she have a question? Okay, Carolina. Hey, Carolina. I would like to say thank you for that donation you sent us. And do you dip your boxes in wax paraffin only, or do you treat them or any other wooden equipment with copper naphthate? Hey, Carolina, great question. I have never used copper naphthate myself. I think there's nothing wrong with it. There's research showing that it's very benign once it sets up. Does stink a little bit at first, but it'll off gas and it protects your equipment really well. I love wax dipping my equipment. Some fellows who wax dip actually put a little bit of copper naphthate in there. I just use the microcrystalline and paraffin at a 50-50 ratio at 250 degrees for 15 minutes. And I love the results that I'm getting. Now, I've I haven't kept my boxes for 30 years either. The copper naphthate, though, I think is a wonderful option for those who are not able to do the wax dip. That's what Bob Benny does. He wouldn't do it if it didn't work good. Bob is extremely health conscious when it comes to the health of his bees, not compromising and putting a lot of nasty chemicals in the hive that he thinks are going to um, cause problems. So I've also seen research. A friend of mine, Stuart, showed it to me, and it was, copper is used all the time. Our bodies need copper, so I'm not concerned about it. We use copper for our tomato plants to help with some of the funguses that grow on them. So the copper naphthate and then letting that dry and then painting over that is wonderful. And boxes are expensive. The way equipment has gone up, doing that, it's a lot of work, but it's going to pay for itself and then some. Bob's told me that he's had equipment that was properly copper treated and then double painted. He may come back and paint it a few years later. He probably does, knowing Bob. He's had them last couple decades. What a great return on your investment. So I really feel like in life and beekeeping that really going that extra mile pays off. Hey, Jamie Irons. I am looking forward to be at the Wilson County Beekeepers on the 4th. I got a lot of meetings coming up actually, and that's the one of them in October. I'm also going to be at the Iowa Honey Producers Conference with Bob Benny, and it's going to be a cool conference in November. I'm excited about. Not as cool as ours, but whatever. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a blast. All right. Let's see. Mm-mm. Yeah, your dad said it could have been on the UPS truck for too long. It possibly could. I've worked in UPS trucks back in the day when I was like 19, 18, 20 years old, driver helping. And if it's in the summertime, it wouldn't shock me at all if that stuff could get up to like 115 degrees in the back of those brown trucks. Those things get pretty hot. All right. But Carolina, I hope that answered your question. And again, I really appreciate you donating to our channel via PayPal. Yeah, Natalie, it's going to be a lot of fun at the conference. So much fun, and this time, please don't talk my ear off though. Last time you just would not stop talking. Dan says I was a young beekeeper 50 years ago. Well, that's going to be me one of these days. I hope if Laura will keep me around that long. Sometimes this time of the year, she starts looking at me like at one of those drones. I'm like, man, I've got to get outside and get some more work done. I hear the giggles in the other room. It's always a good sign when there's giggles around here, just so you know. Anyone use the keg bottling tanks from Man Lake? My homemade one quit, looking to replace it. Hey, Peter Hicks. The keg, I would be a little concerned with it. Um, Peter, if you want to email me at hivelife@gmail.com, I may know of a better option for you. And I really don't like that keg looking unit. I've never used it. It's not Hive Life. Oh, whoops. Hive Life conference at gmail.com. What would I do without you? Rot away in some gutter. That's what I thought. Huh? Okay, so you put the link below. All right, so Laurel's fixing to put down the link. One of the comments was asking about a good vaporizer and where you can get it from. Dan Mack. The Laura B vaporizer, I feel like, is one of the best on the market. And it's not just because it works really good, but Rob actually cares about beekeepers and his product. The customer service is really good. And, he focuses strictly on vaporizers. So, it's not like dealing with Man Lake and they don't even know what they have in their warehouse half the time. Did I just say that out loud? Oops. Uh, getting the look. All right, where was I? I apologize. But yeah, Peter Hicks, I don't like that keg because if you're bottling with that thing, there's not a good way to clean that thing out. It's also not double walled, and it's not always a necessity. But you can overheat your honey really bad with some of these units that are out there. I'm not saying it's necessarily terrible, but for the price you're paying for it, I really feel like it's a little underwhelming. Just my opinion on it. I really feel like it's not a great buy for the price. Hey, Bruce H. Thanks for coming on again. Good night, Bruce. See you next time, maybe next week. Let's see. What do you run your oxalic vaporizer on? I use a auto inverter hooked up to the car battery, and that works out really good for me. All right. First year keeper, is it possible to feed extracted honey in a better bee 3-season feeder over winter in Kentucky? You definitely can feed back honey. As long as it's your own honey, that I wouldn't have any concerns doing that. You can also feed back sugar syrup if you'd rather keep the honey. But if you want to feed, if you're set on feeding them the honey back, then you can do that. The trick is with feeding something as thick as honey or even real thick syrup. If it gets cold, they take it really slow. So you need to get it on as soon as possible if you're going to do that. And I wouldn't feed it in a frame feeder or anything like that where the bees can get down into it because it's so thick. If it gets cold and they get stuck in it, they're gonna they're gonna die. So I would prefer if I'm going to feed something as thick as honey, inverted jar, make a little bit of a bigger hole and put a couple of them in there. Probably a hole about a 16th, maybe a little bit bigger than a 16th of an inch, not quite an eighth of an inch, somewhere in between. Woohoo! Decaf coffee for me. And yeah, decaf this late. Laurel doesn't want me up till 5 a.m. in the morning. True statement there. But you use a jar feeder or something like that. If they get into thick syrup or thick honey and it's cold, they drown at a high rate. Hey Tristan, I don't know what's up with the fall flow, man. I thought for sure this was going to be a great one. I've had so many people commenting in Kentucky and other people as well saying that the flowers are everywhere. I mean, there's just acres of wing stem, goldenrod, ironweed, aster, and they're just not really shelling anything out. Now we had too much rain, but it wasn't all that bad. I think it's just getting too cold at night. I think it's cooler than it normally is. I mean, usually this time of the year, we're still getting a lot of 80-degree days and some 90-degree days. And I don't know. I don't really know. I was talking to Rick Sutton. He runs like 1,000 colonies and got like 40 years of experience in that location in Kentucky, and he's scratching his head about it too. Hey, Thomas Stone, better late than never. That's why it's recorded. But for those of you who just came on, I'm going to say a quick thing. Next week, October the 2nd, 7 p.m. For those of you who are wanting some really intense and high quality information on overwintering bees with insulation, upper ventilation, and want your questions answered by someone who keeps bees in the Yukon in an extreme cold area. And that'll be 7 p.m. Central, October the 2nd, with NTN Tardif. And I really am excited. If nobody else, if none of you show up and it's just me and him, that's okay. I'm excited to listen to him talk about this stuff because, there's a lot of stuff he's testing out. I just can't test here. We don't get enough of a winter here. I can overwinter bees in a barrel in this climate as long as they're healthy. All right. And there is still some room for the conference. It's filling up fast, though. And Kentucky RBs are all over the knotweed. We don't have any of that stuff here. You need to send it down. Just don't tell anyone that I told you. It's invasive. So are bees, though. Bees are invasive. Oh, boy. I'm going to get in trouble. Where is the conference? The conference is in Sevierville, Tennessee, at the foothills of the Smoky Mountains. Speaking of which, I can't tell you what it is, but we just had a new vendor sign up, and they have a new product that's going to be released this winter, and it is really exciting. I haven't had a chance to use it yet, but it's brand spanking new, and I'm excited. I think this is needed to be done for a long time, and even if the first generation isn't quite what we want, it's a step in the right direction. So they're going to be at our conference, but it's going to be a surprise. I'm not supposed to tell anybody, but I really want to. Um, the Honey Show, Laurel left a link for the Honey Show, and we'll also be having a separate video on that. So you can look at the information on that. And the horizontal hive that I have, the guy's going to be giving $100 off and free shipping to those who order one for the conference and the conference only. They are limited though, because he can't bring dozens and dozens of them. So if you want to possibly get one of those hives, go to horizontalbees.com. And if you want one, just let him know that you're going to pick it up at the conference and you'll get that $100 in free shipping delivery, which let me tell you, these things are 2x construction and the legs are like pressure treated wood. So it's heavy stuff, and shipping it can't be cheap. Let's see here. Oh, and I wanted to say one more time, we said at the beginning of the video, Jason Chrisman, or JC's Bees, his channel was hacked. He had like 50,000 subscribers. So probably many of you were his subscribers as well. And unfortunately, he lost almost all of his videos and subscribers. So if you had subscribed to him in the past or would like to, check out his channel. It's Jason Chrisman on YouTube. And if you go to my Facebook page, I did leave a link there as well. And Laura left a link she'll leave one at the comment in this video. Hey, Jeff Upton, how's it going down there? I said woo pig squeal earlier, so I figured you might be on to hear that. All right. Back to the questions. Oh, you're welcome, Charles Ray. I hate that for JC. I just can't imagine. I mean, he's been doing YouTube for 9 years. So much work and so much stuff, and losing subscribers, and it's stupid. There are people out there just literally looking to just mess with people, and they're the ones that spam our chat when we're trying to talk bees. Unfortunately, they probably literally have not much of any kind of a life. So we do, it's all revolving around bees by and large, but at least it's something. I swear half of this room are all from Kentucky. Kentucky is very well represented. Let's see. And the thing of it is, I pick on Kentucky more than anybody else, which is hilarious that there hasn't been a mob to come get me. I'm always teasing Kentucky people. Let's see here. Oh, yeah, I saw that comment. Well, that would be awesome, Philip, if he's able to get his YouTube channel back. Jason just, has a nice channel where he's just honest about, what he's doing. And that's so important. So important. And Doug Summers says, no, you don't. You pick on Ohio State. Hey, I've been a little bit lenient on Ohio State this year because they've already lost a game. And Ohio State got bludgeoned by Bama in the national playoffs. So I didn't want to bring any of that stuff up. But here I just did. See how I did that? Sorry, sorry. Um, yeah, Yvonne's gonna get me. I picked on her hometown and everything. Oh boy. No, we have a great bunch of people from this region. That's my favorite part of this YouTube channel. I love talking bees, but it's nice to be able to have so many people that are like-minded, and many of you have very similar backgrounds and cultures in this region of the country. And centered around family and God and football and bees. What more can you ask for? A little cup of coffee, maybe? I don't know. Speaking of which, all right. So getting back to winter prep, that's one of the reasons why I invited Tardif on, because our YouTube channel exists to hopefully help people out. And this was one area that I've talked on several times, but it really isn't a specialty of mine. I don't winter in a hard location. I've thought in my mind, and I have seen that insulation has helped my bees here, especially during those critical times of the season when the bees really need to get it into high gear. If you have two colonies of equal strength, I believe, in an insulated hive, they are going to go to the next level better and more efficiently than the ones that don't have the insulation. It is a little bit of cost prohibitive sometimes getting the insulated equipment, but you don't always have to go the whole 9 yards of getting Apamaze or getting the polystyrene hives. Some I think there's a pretty good difference just being seen in using an R5 or greater foam board on those critical days, because we're really trying to recapture that heat. And in the wintertime, that heat obviously goes up like it always does. And it does two things. The biggest concern is moisture. We don't want that condensation collecting up top because it hits that cold lid. Hot air holds a lot more moisture, and the bees are really hot. That goes up, it cools down on that cold lid. It instantly, the air shrinks because it does when it gets colder, and the water squeezed out of it and can collect on that lid and then eventually rain down on the bees if it's bad enough. Now, if you have a big cluster that's close to the lid, more than likely they're going to keep that lid warm enough to where the condensation gets pushed out towards the walls. That's why typically big clusters overwinter better and do better. There's a lot of reasons for it, but it's because they can control the thermal dynamics better than a little colony can. But we want to help our little colonies out, and our big colonies still benefit from recapturing that heat. So that's the other reason we want to prevent condensation, and we also want to recapture that heat. So if we have a nice insulation, a bit of insulation up there, then that heat is going to be pushed back down, and our bees are going to be able to recapture some of that body heat. They're going to burn through less honey, and they're also going to be able to expand the brood nest a little bit faster in those days in Tennessee, like February and late January, when the bees are starting to think about brooding. Definitely by first or second week of February, the bees are like, okay, we're brooding up, and they're going to start spreading out a little bit more. And the more they can spread out, the bigger of a cluster you're going to have to go to the next round, and then the next round, and the next round. And then the honey flows here, and hopefully they haven't swarmed on you. But that's just all my theories right there, though. And some of it I've been able to see with the naked eye test, but this fella is actually going to have some really interesting data. I'm so looking forward to that next week. All right, so back to the questions. Apame hive, how would you overwinter them in the north? So that's a great question to ask him. I will ask him that question. My biggest concern with the Apame hive is, of course, the bees need to be in good shape. But then after that, I would provide some upper ventilation, and they're made to have upper ventilation in them. So um, hopefully they haven't propolized it up too much. That's the kind of thing interesting, though. People often talk about how the bees like upper ventilation, but my bees propolize upper ventilation on me all the time. I don't know. But he has done some testing on some different styles of hive. So Don says JC's channel is getting looked at by Google and maybe get his old channel restored, that would be awesome. I know Laurel sent in a report. Um, and she sent one from our channel because that's a problem when you lose your channel. It's hard to get a good communication when you get a certain size subscriber wise. Google actually is very good about communicating with you in comparison to having a small channel. So when you lose that, though, you lose your access to Google. And I know that other subscribers like Randy, um, well, the Dirt Rooster fella, and several other YouTubers have come together to help Jason out. That's what it's all about right there. And I hope that with all of us kind of putting some pressure on YouTube to get to work, they'll crack down on those bums and get him his channel back. That would be great. I don't know if he'll be able to get his videos back or not, but I hope he does. So Philip says, when the cold starts to hit, I replace most of my inner covers with a 1-inch foam board cut to size. It really cuts down on condensation right above them, letting the condensation accumulate on the walls. And I would have to say that that makes a lot of sense. This is also my opinion, but let me say this, if you will, that I feel like we are way behind in beekeeping. Okay. A lot of that is due to lack of collaboration and communication. There are things in other countries they are doing that is ahead of what we're doing. There are some things that we do here that are way better than what they're doing in some other countries. And it's the reason we haven't gone, I think, to much higher levels, and we're still kind of arguing almost amongst ourselves. Everyone gets their own camp. Oh, insulation, no insulation, or this or that. Is a lot of it's because we're not communicating very well with each other. Now we have so much better access to information, and 15 years ago, there's no way I would have known how we didn't have the internet capabilities here 15 years ago to be able to do anything like this, or to be able to have a fellow up in the Yukon to be able to live stream. So things have changed. I don't always like the technological changes, but the communication is now there. And I feel like now that that's available, beekeeping has this opportunity to really quickly grow and all of us benefit from it because we are forging great information from Canada and great information from the South and great information from Europe and other places, and we're piecing them together. That's why America has done so well, is by and large, is because originally it was a bunch of people from all over the world with a good work ethic and opportunity, and they collaborated and created this amazing melting pot. Okay, off the soapbox, but I'm excited. A lot of cool things on the way. But I think beekeeping is going to evolve in the next 10 years pretty significantly. Philip says he should get the videos back. YouTube deletes nothing. Right, right. Well, if they're willing to actually put the work into it, and they might not be flagged. I'm not sure that beekeepers necessarily are on their radar of like, well, we better watch that guy. I don't know. With some of my live chats, they might be watching me. Okay. Got one hive that burr combs my top feeder to the point they can't get to the sugar water. Any suggestions? It does sound like that might be a spacing issue, but sometimes the bees are just really strong, and if maybe do they have too much feed? How are they on feed? All right. Abdul says some hives with single deep brood chambers are completely full of honey. Issue for queen not to be able to lay. I know she slows down this time. Located in Illinois. Okay, that's it's great that you gave me the location. That helps a lot. So bees should be slowing down a pretty good bit in Illinois at this time of the year. I don't know exactly what Illinois is like, but you should have been receiving frost by now, I would say. I know that they're getting it in some places. So a few frames of brood, depending on the size of the cluster, if you can get 2 or 3 good frames of brood in that colony, that would be good this time of the year. I would still think that you want to see some brood this time of the year, but maybe if you're in northern Illinois, you're not. That's really a good question for someone who's more up north than myself. But right now I'm looking into my colonies. Granted, we're getting into the 50s at night, low 50s at the lowest, and getting into the 70s, upper 60s. And I'm on my big colonies. I'm still seeing significant amount of brood. 5 frames of brood, 6 frames of brood, like solid sheets on the nice colonies. But that's why I really like on those big colonies having double deeps going into winter. We're back to double deeps on most of our colonies. Some of them are still singles, but they're smaller colonies that are around 6 or 7 frames in strength. We're trying to get them 8 to 10 frames before winter. We'll see. Let's see. Uh, Someone mentioned Jim Vino. I've been meaning to reach out to him. I would love to have him at our conference and get to talk to him in person. Hey, Matt, I don't know if I said it already, but if I haven't, I apologize. I appreciate so much the $5 donation for our YouTube channel. And stay tuned for next week for our guest who will definitely be more capable of answering your wintering questions. That's half the reason I wanted to have this live chat, is to let people know that's going to be available. The good thing is it's also going to be recorded. So if you can't, it'll probably be an hour and 15-minute presentation. And it's not just all like charts and graphs. I think he's going to do a little bit of that. There's going to be some questions asked from you all, try to get some more individualized help. And then I'm also going to show you his website and other things as well, because he does have some presentations available that are in more depth. So you can get that overwintering information that you need and want. But yeah, he's going to have some good stuff. Any advice for a friend who has a reaction to stings but wants to keep bees? Great question, Jay Custer. There are doctors out there and programs that they have for bee sting, basically bee sting therapy. And it can take a little while, but I believe, oh goodness, Ian Stepler. Ian Stepler's wife went through it. There's been several beekeepers that I know that who have gone through it, and it takes a while, but over time, it gets your body to react in a healthy manner instead of overreacting. But if, I don't know how much that costs. I don't know anything about that. However, that would be the best route, is to get that done. And if he's going to get into a bee yard, he needs to be really well suited up with thick gloves. As much as I love bees, it's not worth a trip to the ER over. Glenn Perkins, good working ethics. Have you worked with some of these 20-something-year-olds? That's why I don't have any employees, Glenn. I've had several people like, you need to go to a university and get some of those guys to help you out. And I do need to get some help. However, it's like pulling a needle out of a haystack a lot of times. Granted, when I was 18 and 19 years old, I wasn't the worker that I am now. But that being said, I did work a lot harder than a lot of these 20-year-olds. Obviously, or this one, you don't get a woman like Laurel by sitting on your laurels. Ooh, I might pay for that one. That was pretty funny. I hear her walking towards me. But yeah, uh, yeah, she's in there. I'm in trouble. Hey, Emily Walker, thank you so much. And that's one of the things that we're going to try to do more in the future. Emily, is have a monthly present. Yeah, that's here she is. I'm in trouble now, aren't I? Um, Thanks for the coffee, by the way. It's really good. Yeah, I want one. I want one. Whatever. I'll take any of it. It's all good. Of course, apple. Anyway, so sorry about that. The boss was communicating with me, and as much as I love you all, Laurel definitely has my ear, both ears. But yeah, Emily, we're planning on kind of making this a regular thing. I have Michael Palmer lined up. I don't have an exact date yet, but Michael Palmer will be giving a presentation on here as well. And I'm looking very forward to that. Michael's one of my favorite beekeepers. And I think what we're going to try to do is maybe schedule it to where, like, once every third week of the month, we have someone come on and have a discussion with us on what's working for them. We may talk about varroa mites or swarm control or overwintering, depending on the time of the year. So that's a direction that I want to do, because as much as I like, talking and stuff, I don't know everything. And it's a great way for me to learn. And it's also a great way for them to get their information out, because there's several great beekeepers out there. Yeah, Cayman's in trouble. I got that look. I think any man can relate with this. That look that your wife or your mother can give you, that you know that, you know, if looks could kill, or boil water. Yeah. Ontario, Canada. Good to have you, Scott. How do you feel about combining so-so hives into monster three deep hives and splitting them in early spring? More bees going into spring overall. Hey, Philip, as long as those colonies of so-so hives don't have any disease problems, and it just maybe a so-so queen, or maybe they just they didn't, there's a swarm you caught or something that developed late and didn't get big enough. I think that's a great idea. It's a very, used to be a lot more common for beekeepers to do that. You take your losses in the fall. That's what we're doing. Combine those hives. You may have some colonies that they're good. Maybe they're not your elite colonies, like you're talking, like your three deep hives. Maybe have some that are good, respectable clusters that are probably going to go into winter with a good, strong, deep box of bees. Maybe you just add that little colony to that one instead. But if it has any types of viruses or disease, that's a no go. Don't risk your champs on that. You probably already know that, but I just want to say that for everybody. But that is a very common practice. Just go ahead and combine them, split them in the spring. Really strong elite colonies here will need to be split, or even if they're not split, have brood pulled away from them in the first or second week of March. And that'll depend a week or two, depending on how cool the winter is for us. Michael says he's getting better with every bee sting. And I'm going to kind of do a little bit of a story into that, because Laurel and I had very different reactions. I'll keep it brief. So when I got into beekeeping, I was one of the fortunate ones. It really didn't affect me a whole lot. I'd get some swelling for sure. If I get stung on my hand, I'd get swelling all the way up to my elbow, and it'd be tight, but it wasn't like it was in pain. It'd be hot, like a little feverish. That's normal, especially if you're not used to stings. The worst part though was the itching for several days afterwards. I don't get the itching anymore. I haven't had itching for probably 10 years or more. I'd say at least 10 years. Yeah, I wasn't itching when I married Laurel. And that's been 10 plus years. And what a great 10 years. What an awesome 10 years. Man, I'm such a lucky guy, trying to make up for those earlier comments. Um, Laurel, on the other hand, her first experience with bees, the professional that trained her at the bee club told her she didn't need a bee suit when they installed a package of bees, which he proceeded to do the old fashioned method of shaking them out, which you can do. I've done it before. I prefer letting them walk out inside the hive, if as long as the weather's not too cold. That works very well. And she got stung to pieces. Like, yeah, Andy had her holding the queen, so a lot of bees were coming all over her. And yeah, he didn't tell her about having her hair up or a ball cap on, so they were getting tangled in her hair. It was a nightmare. She got like 30, 35, 24, 40 stings. Too much for someone who had never been stung by a honeybee before. And she had a good reaction because there was so much venom. And because of that, it's taken her years to kind of get down to a normal reaction level. She's not quite where I'm at, but she's at a very healthy level now with her stings. But when we first got married, she'd get stung, and what hardly left a mark on me would just, she'd look like Mike Tyson on her right arm. It was a big old bicep. And and it swelled from her hand all the way up to almost her shoulder. It doesn't do that anymore, but everybody's body is different. And so, that being said, you have to be careful. And packages, I've installed them with only a veil on, and they were gentle as kittens, but some of them will eat you alive. All right. Yeah, Ian's wife did that therapy. I haven't asked Ian how well that's going, but I imagine it has to be going a lot better than it was if she's actually getting out in the bee yard. And I'm sure Ian and both her are excited about that because Ian's got a couple bees on his place. So it's got to be hard to avoid all those bees. Sean says, I leave my 10 frame medium super on for my bees all winter. What do you think? It's good to have plenty of honey. You definitely don't want your bees to run out. If it's too much, it's not going to hurt them. You'll just have extra, and there's no problem with that. One of the guys that's coming to our conferences, and one of our speakers, and the head judge of the honey show, he runs singles and a half or story and a half, which is a deep with a medium for the brood chamber. And he's done several other things. He's got a great talk on running two queen hives and several other things. So there's a lot of different ways to do it. There's nothing wrong with leaving a 10 frame medium on. Depending on where you're at, though, you might need more than that. So make sure there's enough down in that deep box below, or deep boxes if you have two. Funny, Matthew. Carolina says, we're in Australia. Winter is really mild. I live one super full of honey, leave one super full of honey and one empty on top. I find it good both ventilation and feeding wise. It is always good to have plenty of food. Going along with that, it doesn't matter what time of the year it is, winter or summer. We run single brood management. When we take our honey off, you have got to feed those colonies immediately. If you don't, you'll learn a very valuable lesson on how much bees require when it comes to food stores. They burn through a lot of food, especially during brood rearing season. They're raising brood, they're burning through a lot of food. And there's a monster difference between colonies that go through our summer dearth with extra feed, more than what they need, than ones that don't. Now, of course, with our system, we take all the honey from spring and then we feed them, feed them, feed them. And I mean, it on our big colonies, we fed them like 7 gallons at least, 7 or 8 gallons, maybe more than that. And we drew out a deep box of foundation, but you don't have to do that. It takes a little bit less feed if you don't draw out some foundations, but it takes a lot of feed, and bees burn through a lot, and they really respond well to having plenty of stores. So if you ever get in a period at any time where the bees are low on feed, get it in there and get them some surplus. Feed them some thicker feed. There's no rule that says in this time of the month or in August you can't feed them a 1.5 to 1 or a 2 to 1 thick feed. They need that excess. The bees will not lay and keep a healthy cluster if they sense, oh man, we don't have enough excess food stores. If it's not incoming, then they need to be able to look over in the pantry and see, okay, we're good to go. Otherwise, they won't raise brood properly, and your colonies will be weaker than they should be going into the fall flow, going into anything, winter, whatever. Did you add wax to your Premier Foundation this year? Is the little extra cost over acorn worth it? I do re-wax my acorn. I found no reason whatsoever to wax the Premier Foundation. I used it during the dearth. I used it during the spring flow. It's got tons of wax on it. There's no reason to do it. I like Acorn Foundation too, though. If I get I would say the Premier Foundation though, their single wax is more generous than the Acorn though. But you do, like you said, there's a cost difference there, and there will be a heavy discount on wax foundation at our conference. So I don't know if you're going, Bonnie, but that is one of the things that there will be a much cheaper price. But the Premier Foundation definitely doesn't need more wax on. Now, if you store it for a year or so, wax will dry out. Even if you do it yourself and you roll it on, if it's stored in poor conditions, wax will get dry and brittle, and the bees, it's not malleable. They won't use it the same. and you need to recoat it. But yeah, out of the box, there's no way I'm needing to put any wax on that. Glenn Perkins going deer hunting. All right, man. Well, thanks for coming on. Kamon, did you ever perfect your homemade winter patty mixture? So I assume you're talking about the are you talking about the pollen patties, or are you talking about the Man Lake winter patty dealio that they had that's a really small percentage of protein? Because if so, um, I made it up. I didn't ever do a video on it, and I should have, but honestly, I don't really like it. I didn't like their product either. I tried a few buckets out. I didn't like it at all. I'd rather use a sugar brick, or better yet, don't use any of it and feed sugar syrup. They just, especially for those of you who are up north and get those serious winters, I just think adding any of those extra stuff is so dangerous. And I have to be careful because in Texas, Alabama, Tennessee, I can get away with so much. I can throw all kinds of roughage in my feeds, and my bees will take a cleansing flight in January. They'll take a cleansing flight in December. But if I do a video and 15,000 people watch it and they mix 3 or 4 ingredients into a winter feed and their bees don't get a cleansing flight for 2 or 3 months or 4 months, I could kill their bees or encourage them to try it and kill their bees. So I really prefer not promoting any winter feeds with extras in it, to be honest. Um, oh, wow. I want to say a huge thank you to Jeffrey in Loomis, California for a big donation to our YouTube channel and our live chat. Jeffrey, I really appreciate you very much. That really It was on PayPal. That's why none of you have seen it, but we still appreciate you very much, Jeffrey, for doing that so much. And that kind of stuff is actually going towards getting guys like Mr. Tardif on here to talk about bees, because we are paying these guys, and rightly so. I mean, they're worth every penny of it. So that we're going to use that towards Michael Palmer. That's what we'll use that towards. Appreciate that, Jeffrey. All right. Man, yeah, Man Lake Winter Patty type. Did you ever do a review on the Hive Lefter? Bill asked. I did a video or two that I used it in. I haven't done a summary video. It's on my list of videos to do. I haven't got around to it yet. However, I will tell you this: I really like it. I just talked to Mike Berry on the phone about it, and a couple of other YouTubers who are thinking about getting one. They're really great. They have some issues. You've got to have a level bee yard. It doesn't have to be perfectly level, but it needs to be semi-level. If not, they're really difficult to work with. But I mean, it just makes sense. It's a thing on wheels, and you're holding a lot of weight, and it can be top heavy. It's good at picking up two deeps, and it can maybe get a full medium too. As you've seen in some of my videos, I picked up more than that, but actually picking that up and transporting that around the bee yard or onto a vehicle is something different altogether. I really don't like pulling more than 3 mediums off with it at a time, or pulling 2 deeps at a time. Not that it can't pick up more than that, but the ground where we're at is always unlevel most of the time. So that's hard on the machine. And I feel like also, again, just as it tilts and different things, I like to keep it a little on the light end. It's easier for me to make sure I don't tip anything over and spill anything. And also, I feel like it's not going to wear the machine out quite as quickly. And for me, I'm trying to use this with hundreds of hives. I don't know, well over 10,000 pounds were pulled with that. Not all of my bee yards I could access it with, but we pulled probably 10,000 pounds with that machine, loaded and offloaded with it. And that's a lot of work for a little machine like that. And part of it's aluminum. So I really like it overall. It saves the back quite a bit. Has pros and cons. I don't like the two front the it comes with, you can get forks, you can buy them for 150 bucks and pick up two-way pallets. That is absolute piece of junk. It doesn't work at all. It slides all over the place. I don't like that at all, not one bit. But yeah, as far as it goes, if I was going to use this and I was like, say, a sideliner running 100 hives, or someone with 20 hives wanted a little bit of help, I think it can make some pretty good bit of sense. And what I would do is figure out a way to make my bottom boards either run a strap around your whole hive. Let's say you're wanting to move hives with it, because it can move hives really good too, as long as they're not too big. Probably move a triple deep hive, you know, as long as it's not solid honey, it'll move that. And just make sure the bottom board and the lid and everything, and you can just pick it up by that bottom set of handles, and you can move your hives around very easily like that. I think it's a nice little unit. I think it could use maybe a teeny bit of upgrades for guys like me. My biggest concern with it is if you're running it with hundreds of hives and really rough, how long are these joints going to last on it? We'll see. I'll be using it next year. I've really liked it though. So there's a summary of my review. Let's see here. Bama 49-7. Well, no surprise there. Or oh, two guys at the same time. Can you feed while or in between oxalic acid treatments? Absolutely. Oxalic acid treatments totally can feed during those treatments, Betty. No problem. Let's see. Yeah, some folks are talking about using bleach to prevent fermentation. Um, you can use that to clean out your system for sure, or your buckets occasionally. Some people add a little bit of stuff to their feed to keep it from fermenting. Um, I'll add bleach afterwards. If I have like a 300-gallon tank, I only use 200 gallons and I won't need that syrup for another week, I'll add bleach to it. I don't like doing it. I really try to do a good job of only making what I need. So I don't really go the bleach route very often. But that is something that can work. Let's see. Yeah, thin syrup starts fermenting really, really fast. Let's see. Yeah. So how do you have syrup last a long time? So a lot of talks about fermenting of syrup and stuff like that. I think that's probably the only proven thing with essential oils right now that I know of, is that it can help with some. Um, it can help retard the fermentation process, but it can also encourage robbing too. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. Depends on the type of feeders, but if I have a bucket feeder, like right now we're using a lot of bucket feeders and frame feeders. And if it's a strong colony, I've got a bucket feeder with 10/16 inch holes drilled into that plug. They're going to take that down in a couple days max. If I only now I did try it one time putting a 1/8 of an inch hole in it, just a 1/8 inch hole, and it took them like a week to take it down, and it was pretty fermented. Pretty fermented. Let's see. Yeah, better comb. Hey, One Shoe, would you feed an 8 frame deep with a fully capped medium super on top? I would feed to put some weight on the deep. So, hey, One Shoe, if you get down into that deep box, so let's say that top medium super is fully capped, like you said, and it's full of resources. And I know that you're up there in the New England area, so you're gonna have a longer winter than I am. If that bottom box is almost completely, empty of food and it doesn't have a lot, if it only has like say maybe 1 frame equivalent of stores, then I would definitely give them a little more feed. I'm not saying plug out that bottom deep box or anything, but I would like to see the equivalent of 4 deep frames in that bottom box. And maybe right now you give them just a little bit, just kind of do 2 to 1 or somewhere close to that, and give them a gallon of it. And then you come back and 10 days later and give them a gallon of it if you think they still need it, and just see how much capped honey is in there. But I would preferably, if I was in an area that cold, I would want more than a medium. And I think they're really going to appreciate it, because you really want to have a little bit extra. You want those bees looking at that come late February and going, "Yeah, we got the stores that we need to for full on brood rearing." So 4 to 5 frames down in that brood nest. But that's kind of what Ian does. You kind of wait till the last minute and then just pack it in there because I don't know how much brooding you have going on one shoe, but you definitely don't want to be plugging them too quick to where you lose that, where the queen's running out of room to lay and she can't rear as much brood as she can. So it's a little tricky this time of the year, but um, when you get down in there, next time we do a chat, maybe if you catch me on the one I'm doing with Mr. Tardif next week, then you can let me know if maybe you've checked them and kind of what you've seen. I'm really curious. Hey, Bonnie Joseph, you plan on being there? That's fantastic. So Premier's going to have, I know, at least a lot of foundation on discount because it's basically all together, we're buying like thousands of sheets. So it's like we're all getting the bulk rate for it, like commercial rate, which is really good pricing and the free shipping to boot. And they may have loaded frames. Actually, I've got a message out to them. I'm waiting to get a response back from Premier Foundation. They may have frames with loaded foundations. Excuse me. So that might be even better if you're not wanting to have to pop them in yourself. All right. Redfish Bear says, "Can you define plugging?" So plugging, being as if you plug the brood nest up with anything, the bees can plug it up with pollen. They can plug it up with nectar. Um, Basically, that's not a good thing when it's plugged because the queen needs to be able to lay. It's tricky going into winter, especially if you're trying to run a pretty tight colony where you don't have a lot of space. I think that's why a lot of old literature talks about double deep boxes, is because it's a little bit more forgiving, maybe not as efficient as far as keeping the brood cluster have the thermal dynamics really nice because, well, more and more I see beekeepers that are going to reducing them down to you know smaller space and just having a smaller colony. I think it's better on the thermal dynamics. It makes sense to me than having too much excess space. But if you do that, like say one shoe is talking about having a medium and then having a deep box, and that's what the bees overwinter on. Well, if it's a 5 frame strong colony, then they don't need anything. They've got plenty of food. But if it's a strong 8 to 10 frame cluster, then they're going to burn through a lot of food. And right now, if they're raising brood to go into winter, if he feeds them too much, they're going to plug up some of that space the queen would lay in. So that could be a problem. And if he plugged it up too much, I mean, just think if he plugged up a whole frame that the queen could have laid in, one deep frame on both sides is like 7,000 something bees easily. So that's a good bit of a cluster right there. So you don't want to plug it up and eliminate your winter cluster. All right. All right. So R30 upper insulation and zero up. So he's going with R30 upper insulation and zero upper ventilation this winter. Okay. Okay. I got you. Wow. R30. That is like Hercules level insulation right there. It should be interesting. What you ought to do, Ryan, is see if Jim Vina will come to our conference and bring one of his hives free of bees, and he can show it to all of us at the conference. That would be really neat to see. Hey, Edward Friel. Hope you're doing good up there. Probably getting a little chilly. Philip says, I'm shady. I'm in DFW, so it's the same for me, but too late for Apivar. Why is that? Okay, okay. You're talking to somebody else. Gotcha. Shady says, I just inherited 10 hives from a friend who passed away. That's really sad to hear. Hasn't done anything to his hives in 3 years. Too late to treat with Apavard. Doesn't get really cold here till December. Northeast Texas. It's not too late to treat with Apivar. It's better if it's done earlier than this, but if the bees need some mite control and they're in fairly okay situation, you can still treat and knock those suckers down. You're going to be brooding down there in Texas still for a while, if that's a route that you want to go. Definitely, if possible, learn some information from some local bee clubs and stuff like that. But I hate to hear that about your friend. I had a beekeeping friend. That's been the saddest thing about this YouTube experience is I've met so many people that I'm exposed to a lot more things, which by and large is a very positive experience. But I have had a couple who have were early supporters of the channel a couple years ago that have passed on, and one of them died in a car wreck recently, and he was not young. He was my dad's age, and that was really heartbreaking for me because I got to meet him in person and at a conference, and I just knew that he was so excited about what he was going to be doing with bees next year, and that's just life in a nutshell. Though we really aren't promised tomorrow, and got to focus on what's really important to us. So that'd be like family, friends, bees, eat more honey. You got to make sure you check these boxes off. uh, but yeah, that's been one of the sad things. I had a subscriber that was going to buy nukes for me, and then I hear from him for a while, and his dad ended up buying them, and his son had passed away. It was really tragic, and this was a couple years back, but that was really sad. All right. Congrats, Cayman and Laurel, on 40,000 subscribers. Just getting into our season here in Australia. Ah, that's right. You're on the other side of the planet. This time of year, I review many of your spring videos and find them very helpful. Looking forward to a good year. Well, I hope you all down there and well, down under have a wonderful season. One of these days, when things get a little bit less crazy in the world, hopefully it will get less crazy. I'm going to take a trip down to Australia. Laurel would like to go. Laurel is very into critters, and Australia has quite a lot of unique ones. So it's definitely on the bucket list. What's your opinion on B Pro supplement? B Pro supplement does good. I prefer Ultra B over it. I think it's a better supplement. I don't think anyone argues that point. However, if you're on a budget, it still does a good job. It really is. I think I said supplement, but it's called a substitute, but it really should be called a supplement. It's really nothing more than extras, a supplement. When we eat dinner, could we just all of a sudden start taking a group of pills like magnesium, calcium pills, all these things? Can those be a helpful supplement? I take some. I do believe they can be a supplement, but could that substitute the real thing? No. So if you're just using it to try to help fill in the gaps, I think B Pro will do a good job for that. However, if I have the option of the two, I like to go with the Ultra B myself. And sometimes, if you watch, you can find Ultra B on discount during their sales. Man Lake usually has a Black Friday sale. And at our conference, actually, that's one of the things they're going to be giving a big slashed price on. Not like a 10% off, like a big slash price on their supplements, on their Ultra B. So you can watch out for that. But B Pro works. I know some guys who run thousands of colonies that have used B Pro and said that it's really not all that different. So opinions are like noses. So just take mine with a grain of salt. What do you got, Laurel? You're grinning over there from ear to ear. Does someone make fun of me or what's going on? Oh, you heard that I was going to take you to Australia. Hold your horses or hold your kangaroos, whatever it is. Um, oh, I know they have horses down there, but kangaroos are a little bit more like a native. I wonder if anyone's ever had like a kangaroo race, like pulling a sleigh or anything like that. We'll have to look on YouTube. I'm sure somebody has tried it. I'm sure they have rednecks down there in Australia too. Oh, maybe not. That'd be a pretty nice kangaroo, I guess. But sorry, got a little off topic there. Okay, awesome. Hey Jeff, thanks for coming on. Look forward to seeing you, and good job with going 4-0 this year. It's awesome. Um, so Jack says, "Let me know when you're taking a trip down under." Oh, okay, well I appreciate that, Jack. Yeah, plenty of critters. Don't tempt Laurel, man. She'll have us booked as soon as everything opens up. Hey, Carl says, oh, thank you, Carl, very much. I appreciate that. Um, a lot of the information that I share, I've learned from other people. It's not all my own. I don't try to take credit for everything. Some of it's my wife's ideas. Um, but I do like being able to communicate good information to people, and I appreciate you all saying. There's a lot of Australian beekeepers on here tonight, so obviously your season's starting to kick into high gear. Lucas Giles, you should have received an email already. I'm confident that I've seen you, Lucas, from Hive Life Conference, and you should be good to go. Laurel's checking right now, but some people are having a hard time receiving the emails. And the only thing I can figure is that your email's flagging them because we're sending groups of emails in like groups of 75s and hundreds. And maybe they think it's like a spam or something like that. But you should be good, Lucas. I'm pretty sure I saw you. Also looking for a full tote of syrup. All I can find is buckets. Where? I don't know, Lucas. Besides Man Lake right now, Kelly's produces it up there in Clarkson, Kentucky. I don't have any good sources. The ones that I did know of dried up, especially right now with all the how hard it's been able to source a lot of things. Totes, barrels are harder to find right now. Sugars harder to find right now, and it's made it really hard on us to find stuff as well. Okay, so Shady said 3% might load. Okay, well, it's time to get some treatments in there for sure. Let's see. Let's see here. How far into fall do you feed pollen patties? Good question, Hope Sadler. Um, all right, Lucas Giles, Laurel says you are good to go. We look forward to seeing you in January, man. You are ready to go. Um, make sure you search your email. Maybe it's sent to spam. So Hope Sadler on the pollen patties. We feed into October with the pollen patties. And after that, now if you're further south, you still have pollen coming in. Keep in mind, we're feeding not much past the point where we stop seeing pollen. So we feed maybe just a week or two past when the pollen flow completely shuts down, and the bees start shutting down as well. And I run carnies, so they're even more prone to that. With Italians, maybe you could squeak them a little bit more. Um, but I don't find it's not profitable to feed them in November and December for me at all. And I want a complete brood break so I can get that vaporizer unit and get a 100% mite kill for sure. Okay, so John, you say that about the formic acid, but you still have 10 mites and an alcohol wash. Do you think oxalic acid treatments would help take care of the rest? If so, how many treatments? So that's the trick with oxalic acid, man. It doesn't go very far. Honestly, you're probably looking at 7 rounds in a 21-day period. I would think minimum to get a good drop. Um, Formic acid can sometimes do a pretty good job. I'm interested to try more formic acid in the future. I definitely think here in Tennessee we need 2 rounds of formic acid to get a complete control. This is in celebration of what? Yeah, that's. I know. I'm lucky. I know I'm lucky. Ooh, that smells good. It's going to take a while, but if you can heat that up just a little bit, please. But yeah, oxalic acid, hit them with it. Hey, Yvonne, I didn't. I hate to hear that you're in a wheelchair. I hope you're doing okay. And but yeah, the level hives are always really good. Um, Yvonne, are you still using the regular Langstrasse with the wheelchair? Or are you going like a horizontal route, or are you doing a little bit of each? One of the guys that I know in Tennessee, he's got horizontal hives, he's got Langstrasse hives, he's got 8 frame hives, he's got lay-ins hives, he's got like 7 styles of hives, AZ hives, he's got it all. After purchasing a good sideliner extractor, what would you buy next? Uncapping machine or clarifier or honey pump? Ooh. All right. So let's say you got an extractor that's doing a good job. So there's several bottlenecks that happen in extracting. One being usually the extractor can't keep up if you have a good uncapping system, but you don't have that. So you've got the extractor, clarifier. Hmm. That's the problem. I know of some really good uncapping machines that are good for sideliners, but most of them aren't sold in this country. They're European design, and it's frustrating. We should have a lot more options here. And I'm excited because I think as soon as things open up in Europe more, we're going to have them at our conference because we have so many people coming. It's worth their time to come and get those products here in our country. But right now, as far as like what you need, a clarifier, it could help you a little bit. But honestly, I think you need to work on speeding up the uncapping time. Problem is, if you go to like a Silver Queen machine, which is really a top, a nice professional machine, then you're going to have more back end stuff. You're going to have a bigger extractor because it'll uncap a box a minute, no problem. And a honey pump, I don't really think is worth it without the clarifier. So those kind of go hand in hand. I would have to say uncapping is what you really need right now. So we don't have a lot of good options in this country, man. I think maybe the best sideline options are the Maxent chain uncapping system. The problem with it is, though, this really frustrates me about this system is if you have that chain uncapper, you've created tens of thousands of pieces of wax that big. And now you've got to have a way of clarifying that and filtering that out. Because if that goes into your extractor, which it will, and you have like a 5 gallon bucket system with a strainer into it or any type of strainer, it'll clog that up in a couple minutes. And now you've created a monster bottleneck for yourself. So if you have a chain uncapper or anything that creates a lot of particles, you really need a clarifying system. And then if you go like the simple Harmony Farms uncapper, I did a video review on that. You slide it through there. It also cuts tons of little particles. The best uncapping systems, in my opinion, have a cut that's very similar to a knife, and it just cuts it off in a nice sheet. The problem is the only good systems like that I'm aware of are the Silver Queen. Lyson has some systems, but they're pretty expensive as well. So that's the problem. It's one of my biggest frustrations in beekeeping right now is we do not have very good sideline equipment. There's a lot of beekeepers on here tonight that have 20 hives, 50 hives, 100 hives, and you either have more small sideline to hobby level extraction equipment, or you have five, six, $7,000 extracting units. It's so expensive to extract honey, and it shouldn't be so. That being said, at our conference, we are going to have a area for new inventors. So if you have new products that you've invented or made better, bring it to the conference if you're coming, and we will do a YouTube video on it. If it's a good product, we will definitely do a YouTube video on it. And there's going to be Bob and Randy and Jeff and Bruce and Mike Berry and several other Frederick Dunn, several other YouTubers there. So it might get several videos done on it if it's a really good product. Yeah, it's right in there. Hey, Jason, thanks for coming on and supporting us yet again. Appreciate you very much. Hey, Castle Hives, I appreciate you talking to Mel at Blue Sky Bee Supply. I've actually got to reach back out to them so I can confirm a little bit of the information. But Blue Sky is going to be a great vendor. That they're very concerned about producing products for beekeepers, and they understand the needs of beekeepers because they are beekeepers. I love it. So the chain uncapper by Maxent, a commercial buddy of mine uses, and he runs like 1,000 hives. So you can now he has several people helping him too. But again, with if you have any uncappers that have the chain that break up all that wax particles into little pieces, you have to have a clarifying system. Now, if you have a welding buddy or can weld stainless steel, you can make a clarifier pretty easy. Just drain it into a tank that's on the floor, and you have baffle systems. And you can watch my video or other videos on clarifiers, and you can make them pretty easily. and it gets 90% of that wax out of there. And then you can, but then if it's on the floor like that in a clarifier, how do you get it off the floor? You got to have a pump. Fun times. It's complicated extracting honey, and it's expensive. There are better options out there that are more reasonable, but again, very few of them are in this country. Sorry to not be very helpful, but honestly, the best thing I think uncapping would be the answer. Sorry, that was a really long response. What is your favorite or best mite treatment that you recommend? I like Apagard the best. And then formic acid. I think the Formic Pro, and used correctly, can be a good option. It's harder the further south you go to make that a viable option because you have less opportunities to use it. Apagard's a little bit more forgiving, but Apagard's not perfect either. And you all will see that in the experimental yard finish when we have all the data put together. All right, but the Apagard is definitely a good treatment. So is the Formic Pro. But all the treatments have to be monitored properly and used properly. There's no really easy silver bullet. And I like oxalic acid too. I really like having a combination. Let's see. So Bonnie Joseph, so you said your licensed uncapper from Betterby has a heated blade, really like mine. So Bonnie, are you talking about like their big system that you can drop it in and feed it through? It looks very similar to a Silver Queen from Cowan. Or are you talking? I think I have heard of a system where you pull a frame across a heated blade and it cuts it very good. If you don't mind clarifying, let's see. A pre-swarm detector that goes into a hive. It should notify you via text message. Hey, if that actually was accurate and could work, that would be fascinating. I would love to see that. That is still very hot. Can one just go to the marketplace, not attending any of the speaker events at the Hive Live? Due to work, I can't take off to attend the speakers events, but would like to purchase some equipment. Hmm. Possibly. The problem is we're really not set up to monitor a lot of things, and so especially since this is pretty new to us, we've tried to keep it really simple. That may be an option. Laurel and I have been discussing that. We're discussing a lot of options right now, and we're working on 2023. That pretty much that whole list right over here is speakers and different things for 2023, vendors, different speakers and whatnot. If you have any suggestions, always leave them. But that is something that we haven't decided yet because it just could make it a lot more complicated. But Jamie, if you want to email me at hivelifeconference@gmail.com, um, I'll have your email. And then when I decide, I can let you know. I'll probably announce it on here as well. Silver Gorilla says, I am my uncapper. My arm gets tired. Laurel uncapped thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds of honey by hand. So sometimes it just stinks having to do that. But our business, we have a lot of nice equipment now, but really a lot of that's happened in the last 5 years where we've gotten better at beekeeping and we've been able to afford little pieces here and little pieces here. Yeah, Philip, we're already got the 2023 going on. We got 2022 as well. Wow, $200,000 in equipment. I can believe it though, Matthew, to have a big system like that in the honey house. It's expensive. I really think that there should be nice small hobby and sideline useful equipment that you should be able to have a full system, and it won't be able to do 15,000, 20,000, 50,000 pounds of honey very well, but that can do 2 to 5,000 pounds or less of honey very competently and efficiently. Yeah, Bonnie Joseph, pull the frame across. Hey, Bonnie, you ought to get a YouTube channel and do a video on that. I would like to see how that works in a YouTube video. Let's see here. I have an old Walter T. Kelly extractor. Thank you, Craigslist. And I filter through a standard paint strainer only, small scale beekeeper. That's the way you got to do it when you start out, Lee. The first extractor I used was a 3 frame Kelly extractor hand crank, and we ran it through our honey through buckets for several years. And then we started adding pieces. And for young beekeepers, whether it's, you're new to beekeeping or whether you are actually young, if you get your bees to a very good, healthy level and a consistent level, they will make enough to pay for new equipment. Now, it might take you several years to actually make any surplus money if that's your goal, but I'm here to tell you that starting a business off, we went through several years where I was running a full time truck driving job and running a couple hundred colonies with Laurel. And we weren't taking a dime out of the business, and it was all going back into investing, getting better equipment, and also getting better as beekeepers because it would have been a terrible idea to jump out of the truck 5 years ago. I didn't know enough to maintain a business. And it's not always just maintaining the bees. There's a lot of business stuff that's involved too, or just having the right equipment to be fast and efficient, not spend 2 weeks extracting, you know, that kind of stuff. Tomahawk Missile wants to know, what do I have in this box back here? I've got a jar of honey. I've got a dirt rooster hat. I've got a queen marking pen. I've got a heat reader. All kinds of stuff. We got all kinds of bee stuff around here. It's all bee stuff everywhere. How's the test yard going? It's going really good, Steve. The only trick is I haven't had the time to be able to format it all together. We're trying to get all of our colonies prepped for winter. The conference is taking hours every day, literally hours every day of my time to network with getting vendors, to respond. Like today, there's like 20 letters or something that we picked up, and we got to process those and email those people back. And we're constantly trying to do more and more and more. And I've got to get the hotels finished up. I've almost got that updated. And the honey show is now, Laurel left a link earlier. So we got all the information for the honey show. A lot of this stuff is first time things. So I think in the future, it won't take quite as much of my time once it's already done the first time. But, anyways, it's all going really good. And I am excited to see the information that we have. And once you all see it, I think it's going to give you a really good idea of what I've been seeing for years with some of these products, and some of this I have never tried before. So I think it gives us a really nice foot forward. And I'm able to compare some of my results with some of the universities who have done similar studies. And now, how next year are we going to do the test yard to be able to make it better? I am going to be auditing some interns next year and probably have them for interns for a handful of weeks. And if they do a good job, then I'll pay them. I don't mind paying people if they do a great job, but I hate having people get in my way in the bee yard. And I used to train people driving a semi truck, and there's a lot of bums out there. And, I'm not saying, everybody is, but usually the people that are the best workers are too busy working on their own stuff. You know what I'm saying? And that's the way it was in truck driving. We didn't get a whole lot of the good truck drivers. They were already too busy somewhere else. Hey, Greg Burns, up there, Nature's Image Farm. I hope you're doing good. Nature Image Farm and Greg is where we get our feeder buckets from and our bucket plugs. He'll be at the conference. So if you're wanting to make your own buckets and just need to get bulk bucket plugs or anything like that, Greg's the guy to reach out to. He'll be there at the conference. And, he's a little weird, but, a lot of people from Ohio are. If my Ohio uncle is watching this, That would be funny. I doubt it. My aunt might be. Let's see. Let's see. Oh, so you got the 120 frame setup, Matthew? Wow. Whew. That is a big setup. Make some serious honey that way. Hey Brad, whoa, thank you so much for the $50 donation to our YouTube channel. We really appreciate you. And that is a massive set of antlers on that thumbnail of yours. Was that you or is that somebody else? um, hey Brad, I appreciate you very well, and you're welcome. I hope that we're able to help. Um, so this year it took 3 people to do the extraction at the least to run the system. It was nice, Cayman. Can't wait to see how the shed works this winter. Well, ours, and see, that's what we had Laurel and myself this year extracting, and it worked. The problem is, and you'll see in the video, Matthew, and the rest of you all, that the system we have right now, and that's the way I bought it, and it works. But there's some serious bottlenecks that we have. So as it came, it did not have an auger and or a capping spinner. So that's creating a huge bottleneck. Our Silver Queen is very capable of pumping out the frames, and but all that wax drops down into an uncapping tank, and then it has a stainless steel screen that the cappings stay on top of, and of course the honey goes down below, and then we have to bail that out, and like every handful of boxes we have to bail out buckets 2 gallons at a time, and it works. That takes a lot of time, and plus the uncapper is not that big to fit underneath it, and so it fills up pretty fast, and then we have to bail the cappings out into a wax melting unit that it burns the honey. You get all that nasty, um, oh, I can't think of it right now, but basically all that cappings honey, and it's all burnt and darkened and not really good to sell. It's definitely been the enzyme's been burnt out of it, and I don't like it at all. That takes a lot of time, so I actually just got a quote from Cowan on an auger and a capping spinner, which is going to be a lot of money, and I really don't want to drop that kind of money right now on it. But the nice thing about Cowan, it's made in the U.S. It is made to last and do a great job. Will save so much time, and I know that if I use it, I'm not planning on going anywhere, and I'm planning on keep doing beekeeping for the rest of my life. But it really retains a lot of its value. So, and that's basically well-made products in general. But yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Hopefully, we can get that done this year. And that's the nice thing about that capping spinner. Of course, you maintain that high quality honey coming out of it. Oh no, Yvonne, am I picking on you again because you're from Ohio? I hate that. I'm so sorry. It really is nothing personal. And the reason I keep saying that about her is and our video where we blew up the hive with the moonshine and treatment and all that stuff. I said East Bernstein, Kentucky, as a place where a lot of this redneck stuff comes from, and she lives there, and poor thing. And there are some questionable characters in East Bernstein, though. You got to admit. I know she'll admit that. Wow, Utah, Brad. That's amazing. I've got to get out there. That thing's scary big. So Stan asks, what does your typical box look like going into winter? Frame configuration. Well, there's some variables there. If I'm overwintering in a double deep, which is nice because that means the colony's big, then I'm going to have a little bit of honey down in the bottom box. I'd like to see 3 to 4 frames of honey down in that bottom box. And then I'd like to see, in the top box, if it's got 9 frames, then I want to see 6 or 7 frames of feed up in there. So it can be completely capped up top, but typically in a double situation, I'm going to have a good bit of brood down below, a little bit of brood up in the top. And if for some reason most of the brood's up in the top and I've got a good bit of food down below, sometime in October, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to pull that honey from below, bring that up, and make sure all that honey's up in top, because that's what's going to do in wintertime. They're going to go up there, and I want to make sure that they're not going to find big gaps without honey in that box. Thankfully, we live in an area very similar to Stan that's very mild, so the bees are able to get some warmer days, typically be able to move a good distance over to the food. It's a good practice to do, though, because you never know where you're going to have those cold spells come down from Canada all the way down to Texas and mess everything up. Those darn Canadians throwing us cold weather down here sometimes. And I blame Ian for all of it myself. He just, what happens is Ian complains about the cold so much. The winter, like Jack Frost and all those guys, they're just like, okay, I'm so tired of it. We're going to have a really hot, dry year for Ian this year. And we're going to send it down to, let's see, Texas, and totally mess up the whole plastic industry, which it did. It really affected the plastic industry this year. That's why Apame and a lot of companies have really had a hard time. A lot of other plastic businesses, because it just messed up all the factories down there in Texas. They produce a ton of plastic. But anyways, so that's a double deep configuration stand. With the singles, it's more complicated, like Ian does, and Ian does a fantastic job of showing you how he plugs his singles right at the last minute, because you want to get all that brood out of them you can to get that big cluster. But then right towards the end of the season, which for us would be October, mid to late October, just pour the 2-to-1 feed to them. Just hit them, hit them, hit them. And then I would like to see in a single, if it's a good, strong single, 8 frames of 7 at the least, 8 frames, 7 to 8 frames of food. But you're going to have to get that in last minute. That's so good. Thank you, Laurel. Bonnie Joseph, you're in East Bernstein too, man. I'm burning multiple people. I'm going to be in trouble. Ian likes to share. Well, he doesn't have to share everything. Let's see here. Tomahawk missile. I love boxes, feeding bees, and I love killing varroa. All right. Well, that's good because there's a lot of it to do. Hey, thanks for the score updates, Don. I can always count on you during that Bama games to keep me updated on the scores. Matthew says, I may be moving to East Tennessee next spring, though. How do you think Carney Caucasian will do? May bring a couple hives with me. Will leave the rest of the girls with my farm friend who I mentored this year. Hey, Carnies do wonderful here. Bees and healthy bees do really good in this state. Tennessee's so mild in our winters. You'd have to have a very poor bee for it not to overwinter in Tennessee. Obviously, some things are better than others. But Carnies, I really like them. Bob's running some Caucasians down there in the North Georgia mountain areas, and he seems to like them. He's also got a lot of Carnies too. I've run Italians very successfully, so I don't try to get caught up too much into. The name really doesn't mean a lot, of course, as you know, Matthew, because everything's such a bunch of mutts, just like we all are here in the United States. Just a mixture of everything, but I want the Carney characteristics, and they do really good here. If you're wanting to sell a lot of bees, Italians have some advantages. But if you're not really into trying to just pump out a ton of um, bee cells and take them out to the almonds, then I really don't see Italians being super advantageous. And Carnies can be very gentle. I love the lack of brood in December for oxalic acid mite kills, because that's a problem here, Matthews. If you have Italians that are really aggressive brooders, I'll go in there and it'll be Christmas Day and I'll have a frame and a half of brood. You can't kill the mites like that, and it's frustrating. So they'll do great down here. Yeah, you're right, Hi-Fi. I can sell my burnt capping honey as baking honey, and it'll work, but I just don't want to have to fool with that. Now I have to find somebody to to do that with, and honestly, I just don't want to have to fool with it. I don't have the time, and I also just don't like nuking honey in general. I don't know how much, but I would say a dozen buckets of honey this year that we probably could have saved through the cappings at least. It might be more than that. I don't know. It was a lot. I need to count it up, and I hate nuking honey like that. Did you ever try the extended release oxalic acid Randy Oliver is developing? Technically, I'm not supposed to be doing that kind of thing, but maybe I have and maybe I haven't. I'm actually working on trying to get that legalized for the experimental yard next year and EPA approved for my test usages. Obviously, not for everybody. I don't have that much pull. Um, but yeah, I think it's promising. I know a guy who is doing formic acid here in Tennessee in April when it's cool, and he's an extremely good beekeeper. Formic acid when it's cool in spring knocks him way back, and then he does after the honey supers are pulled in like late June, July, early July. He will put on those oxalic acid pads of Randy. And I think at this point, it's safe to say that they help hold the mites down. I'm not sure we can say that they actually pull them backwards significantly. And then he cleans them up late in the year, around this time of the year or early October, with formic acid. And that's a very natural way of controlling mites. And you notice there how he's using multiple treatments, though. Bob does that. I do that. Most everybody I know that's very successful with bees does that. And the experimental yard is going to show some of that and a few other odds and ends. Let's see. Hey Matthew, I'm pretty sure they'll do good down here. I don't see why they wouldn't. I've had some queens from northern Vermont from Michael Palmer, and they've always done really good for me. And so it's all right. It didn't mess it up. It just didn't get hot. Yeah, I don't know why. I was just no problem. Hey Nathan, yeah, I haven't really looked into the USDA stuff. I probably need to look into that maybe a little bit. I just honestly I don't have the time. I'm looking into something similar though, um, but it's not really from the government. I like avoiding the government. TJ, when do you switch from 2-to-1 feed for winter in Tennessee? I'm going to start using that in October, so it's not too far away. Probably start it up here in the next 2-3 weeks. I'd start 2-to-1 feed. Um, that's typically what I like to have all my feeding done by the end of October here. You can feed later than that, but why do it then when you can do it earlier? And the bees will appreciate it earlier too. Let's see. Loomis, California worked really well. Awesome. And that's a nice thing is I'll get all these different experiences. David's talking about how he worked in the 80s with a guy with 1,600 hives, 55-gallon drums, hard work and few stings. Well, at least it wasn't hard work and a lot of stings. Things have definitely changed since the 80s for sure. So, just going off of memory, Ian, on the mite counts, the initial mite counts in the experimental yard, um, I cannot remember the exact average, but this was taken back in August. We were under 2% on average. We were, I think, 1.6 or something like that for the average of all the colonies. That was the control. That was all of those. Granted, the hives were put in late April. So, and that's pretty good. Some people like 1 point something percent. That's not that bad. However, that was in August, and now we are pushing October. By now, if we had not done any of those treatments, which the control will show this, um, all of those colonies could be in the 4% range or thereabouts, and that's not going to overwinter well or not overwinter at all. And then after the post treatments, we were seeing some really nice reductions. And all of the ones that we did, we ended up being able to use the formic acid because we've had a cool summer and fall, um, cooler than normal, still brutal. And we had pretty good control. It wasn't anything, a lot of these companies will say 90%. I think the biggest surprise with the oxalic acid is that it was not, a lot of people say if bees are broodless and you do an oxalic acid treatment, you're going to get 90 plus percent in your, maybe other people do. This is a small test yard. But I did not. Most of these things were giving us good control, but they were doing exactly what I thought some of them would do, and that's why we do multiple treatments in a year. But I don't have all the numbers like right here. I can tell you, but I will have all of those on YouTube where you can read them and compare them. I just haven't had time to do it, but I will do it. I promise. But post treatments, the mite counts on average were reduced by 80 something percent. When will I have final numbers? I have the final numbers. I just don't have them in a sit down format. Honestly, if I wasn't doing the conference, I think I would already have them easily up by now. Also, we just took a family vacation, which was nice. I got some serious sandburn from surfing. Nothing like stand up surfing, but they had some awesome waves at the Gulf this year, and I was able to use my 41-inch bodyboard and catch some waves and get caught by some waves, and those were the ones that really did a number on me. That was awesome, though. Let's see. Is it bad that I watch beekeepers like golf events? You're comparing beekeepers to golf? I don't know if I should be offended or not. I'm just messing with you. Let's see here. But yeah, as far as the average drops, most of them we got some good kill. And see, this is I think this pretty much figured this would be the takeaway. But on average, our drops were 80% in the 80% range, which on some of the colonies that like because I'm giving you averages, so some of these can have like 2% infestation rate. This one over here might only have a less than a 1% infestation rate, and so the average is out for the yard. But if you get an 80% drop on a colony that doesn't even have a 1% infestation rate or has a 1% infestation rate, that might be good. Colony's good to go through the winter. If this colony over here on the high side of the average has a 2.2% infestation rate and you get only an 80% drop, and that treatment was done in August and they have a few more months to build up, it probably won't kill our colony, but it'll send them weak into winter. And definitely if you have a long winter like Ian does, then it's definitely not good to go into winter with more than a 1% infestation rate. Definitely not. So I'm anxious to have all this collected and put together, and I will do a better job next year of having it more on time and having it quicker and available. But I'm going to have some help. I'm going to have to restructure my business, and the conference should be we're already working on 2023. So I'm actually going to invite another Canadian next year. Ian. Hey, Ian. I wasn't actually able to. Well, I was planning on doing the formic first, and we actually did get enough cold weather, so we went with the formic route instead of the apivar. I thought for sure we were going to do the apivar because we were just getting too many hot days. I'm like, there's no way. But towards the end of August, 1st of September, we were able to get the formic treatment done. So we went that route because I wanted to kind of lean that way. However, I am doing a separate test. It's not with my it's not the same though. It's with the USDA. They're doing a test. They reached out to 100 beekeepers and they sent us a kit and we're doing a test and sending the results back to the USDA. So they are actually doing the research on that, but as soon as they post that information, I'll be sharing that. It's supposed to be not really it's not kind of like what you do and I do, where we go and check with an alcohol wash. We are doing that with the test, but they're going to get the data back, and they're just seeing it if there's any resistance build up. I guess it's kind of the same thing, but they're going about it different. I've got these cups, I'm pouring bees into them, and then I'm putting little pieces of Apivar strips in there. And then after a certain period, I can't remember how many minutes it is. Then I have to take them out and then do an alcohol wash and see how many it killed, and then get write these numbers down and send it back to the USDA. So I'm anxious and glad that they're doing that. I'm hoping that they have some data to share soon. I wanted to do the Apivar this year as well, but I just didn't have the time. I need you to find somebody like let's like Carrie that I can just like count on and work for me all the time. That'd be awesome. All right. I'm gonna go off through some of this stuff real quick. I said some of this earlier, so I'll be fast. Jason Christman, JC's Bees, had his channel hacked. A lot of us beekeepers are trying to let you know that he is back on YouTube, and that's on my Facebook. And I also posted it at the beginning of the video. So if you watch this video later, you can see the link to his channel. YouTube thinks that they might be able to get it straightened out, and the people that hacked and took all his subscribers away, they might be able to fix it. Horizontal hives, the fellows that make our hive, make the hive that we have for, and we've been doing the horizontal videos on. It'll be $100 off of the conference with free shipping, but there's a limited quantity as they can't bring dozens and dozens and dozens because they're so huge. So if you're interested in one of those, reach out to horizontalbees.com and say that you'll be picking it up at the conference, and you'll get $100 off and free delivery, which on it, something that heavy and big is got to save you a lot. And I'm excited. Hey, Ian, I don't know if you saw this earlier, but I'm going to have a Mr. Tardif. I think it's Etienne Tardif up there in the Yukon area. He's going to be coming on next week and talking on overwintering up north and insulation versus non-insulation, all that kind of stuff. That'll be October the 2nd, which is coming up in a week, 7 p.m. Is that a week? Maybe. Yeah, looks like it. Yeah, it's a week from today. So 7 p.m. Central, and he'll be giving us a lot of good information. And we have the Honey Show information released if you want to enter into the Honey Show at our conference. And we are running out of space. So all of our speakers better be ready to go. Laurel's posting links down below to a lot of these things I'm talking about. Wayne says, how many times a year do you pull honey on average? Only once. You can take it off throughout our spring season, but in Tennessee, in my area of Tennessee, we have a pretty compact flow. It's short, and some years can be awesome. This year, we had a really wonderful year, and we usually produce honey between early April to around the first or second week of June, depending on the year's temperatures. And during that time period, if the bees are strong and they have good management and no mites so to speak of any significance, and plenty of honey supers, we can, on a good year, have colonies that produce over 150 pounds of honey. And we had colonies that did well over that this year. We definitely averaged way over 100 pounds a colony this year, which was one of the reasons we've also been behind on getting this information out, is because I have too much honey. I've never had this much honey before. And then we did get that new extraction system. So you're like, what's the deal, Kamon? I had to put the whole thing in. And it was, I didn't get it in January. I got the thing in like late, sometime in June. So it was like right when I needed to be extracting, I was putting in a whole new system. Uh, it's been great. I love the thing. It was bad timing, but we basically just go in, we pull honey at one time. If we can, sometimes we'll do two pulls. We'll go in and we'll take everything but the bottom super above the excluder, and then we'll come back in one more time. We'll use escapes on the first pull, drop them, and come back about 36 hours later, 2 days at the most. It's good to get them quick and take those, and then come back the next time, use a fume board and get the last box. And but preferably, I like to get it all in one shot. But if you do that, then you have to feed really fast. So that's how we do our honey. All right. Hey, Ian, yes, that USDA test is through Frank, and he was the one that messaged me. So I'm really hoping that they will be able to get some good data from it. I know that It's a really big topic right now, and a lot of people have different opinions, and possibly because people may be getting different results. I know that you have used Apivar with great success for years, and I've had some years of wonderful success with Apivar, but I've just not had the good washes after it. Last year was terrible. I spent a lot of money and I was not getting big knockbacks. I was getting little knockbacks or no knockback. A lot, mostly just bees, mite populations staying where they were. And I've been getting a lot of reports of that this year. And these are from people that are doing washes. So it makes me concerned about the product. And I hope that if that is I hope it's a manufacturing issue. It still makes me mad if it's a manufacturing issue, but at least it's something that can be remedied. If it's actual mites developing resistance, then that's a big problem. I hope it's not that. But maybe, hopefully, the USDA will be able to crack that a little bit there at their lab. Okay, so you're saying your area is starting to find tolerance um, a little bit. So if they're starting to get tolerance, man, it seems like it's just coming in a wave. I have heard though from people I trust that there has been some changes in the Apivar strips and manufacturing. They've changed a couple things. I don't know that firsthand, but it's coming from people that I'm pretty confident know what they're talking about. They're researchers. However, we'll just have to see, and that's why you do your alcohol washes, and that's why I do mine. Honestly, you can't trust any of these products because none of them are perfect, and then some of them are prone to maybe possible resistance or to maybe a manufacturer defect or something. And your bees are worth so much. Even if you don't do an alcohol wash to every colony, do a spot check throughout your yard. I get bludgeoned a lot for doing alcohol washes and needlessly killing bees. Oh my goodness. I hate it. I don't enjoy it. It takes so much time. I hate it. However, when I started doing alcohol washes is when I started taking our sideline to a serious business. It really made that big of a difference because I realized, whoa, my treatments are not giving me enough kill. And this is why I'm coming out of winter with smaller clusters and I'm having inconsistencies because that's what we were having a lot of early on when we started making the transition into a business. We'd have, let's just say 100 colonies come out of winter, and we'd have some that we had too many that died. We'd have some that were weak, and then we'd have these over here that were just how we wanted them. We were like, why can't we see more of those? Why can't we get at least a majority, like 80% plus of nice colonies? When we started doing alcohol washes and seeing what was actually going on with the treatments and the mite loads, it really opened our eyes to, okay, we can't trust any of these products. Apagard's doing good, Formix are doing okay. All of these different things. Did I say that you were doing an off-label treatment, Ian? Oh, okay, okay. I see what's going on. Okay, yeah, I knew you didn't use a off-label Amatraz, but basically, when I started seeing and getting more consistency and producing what I wanted to produce, it really revolved around the alcohol wash and understanding that, okay, this colony has a high infestation rate, this one has a low infestation rate, and now I can start dialing in my treatments and taking care of the colonies that need more attention. And all of a sudden, bam, I go from losing 30 to 40% a year to dropping that down to around 10% a year or sometimes less than that. And instead of having maybe only 30% of my colonies to be champs, we're getting champs, that are like 70 plus percent that are really nice colonies. So a lot of it comes down to that extra little bit of work and it really makes a difference. Yeah. Like Hi-Fi says, an integrated pest management system. It's huge. It's huge. Cayman, are you planning on doing the Tennessee Beekeeper Seminar in March 2022? Great information you provide. Hey, thanks, Jeffrey. Are you talking about the TBA's conference in March? See, it was supposed to be in October this year, and they moved it to March. They said it was partially due to COVID stuff, and I'm sure that was a factor, but there's other things going on at the TBA as well. And um, October's a great time to speak at conferences. March is a terrible time to speak at conference. I usually have my first swarm cups around the first week of March. And if it's a warm year, I may have capped swarm cells if I'm not careful the first week of March. I used to have it all the time when we didn't cut our colonies back. We pull those big ones back and yank a frame of brood out and give it to a colony that's good but a little bit behind. The TBA though, if that's the one you're talking about, I'm not sure if I'll do the March one. It's a terrible time for me, and honestly, I don't like how they're running things. The TBA is really frustrating, extremely frustrating. They're too busy with their politics and stuff to actually focus on taking care of beekeepers, and that's really upsetting. And there's a lot of men and women who have tried to do a lot of good things through the TBA, and they shoot them down because, well, we've got our system. It's good old boy system. We don't have time for that. Dan Schneider says, I've been rotating treatments and haven't bought bees for years. I like to hear more stories like that because you can't beat your own bees and keeping your own bees. And that's where true profit and value comes from. If you're not buying bees anymore, that saves you a ton of money. If you properly, like Carolina talked about, using copper naphthate for those of you who can't wax dip, and really protecting those wooden boxes, make them last 20 years. Put that extra work into it. You know how much wooden boxes have gone up over the last 20 years? A lot. A lot. I wasn't even beekeeping 20 years ago. And I can tell you, when I bought my first set from Kelly's 18 years ago, they were a lot cheaper than they are now. And the quality was better too. So go the extra mile. Take care of your bees. Overkill. So Michael says, what's the TBA? The TBA is the Tennessee Beekeepers Association. And it's not really they have a conference every year. They asked me to speak, and I was going to in October. I'll be in Iowa. I'll be in Des Moines with Bob Benny. That's going to be a lot of fun. And Bob and I have kind of staggered out our topics so we can cover some of the more important things. So we'll be in Des Moines the 12th and 13th of November. That'll be a lot of fun. Or better yet, come to our conference in January. But you might live closer to Des Moines. Hey, Jeffrey, good question. Are you working with scientists? I've been talking to them. It's not like I'm working really closely right now. I hope to do more of that in the future because they definitely have some really good skill sets that I don't have. However, we are doing some of our own science here, for better or for worse. Some people think I'm a fool. That's fine. I get that a whole lot. I think, again, when I started doing my own experiments and my own science, because let me tell you, back when I was just reading it, okay, they say this works. Well, they say doesn't necessarily translate into success in my bee yard. So I feel like what we're doing is not perfect, but it's going to help me out, and I think it'll help other people out. Oh, I thought TBA meant to be announced, but no, I'm not really working super closely with a scientist right now. I have had like Humberto Abon Christianity that has the YouTube channel Inside the Hive TV. He has helped me multiple times, talked to me on the phone, and helped give me better ideas how to execute this properly. Especially right now, a lot of people aren't getting out and about in the science realm. So they're not really willing to come to bee yards and do that kind of thing. Hey, citizen science is huge and always should be huge. I I I'm not trying to hate on anybody here, but I don't think that anybody could argue that beekeepers have done more for beekeepers than anybody else has. I think most of us can agree with that. Now, there are several scientists that are good beekeepers. I think the best scientists are good beekeepers. Um, and doesn't mean that people that aren't beekeepers can't. Sometimes you'll get a full, fresh view from someone who's never even fooled with bees and create a new product. And that's important too. I'm sure when someone thought about wax dipping boxes for the first time, that didn't come from like, oh, Some guy just in beekeeping thought it'd be good to wax tip my bosses. No, they were doing that in some other industry. And some guy got into bees and thought, wow, this could translate over. My equipment will last longer. And lo and behold, wax tip boxes. So we definitely need to cross things. We need to get things out of our own beekeeping bubble. But by and large, beekeepers do more for beekeepers than anybody else. And we need to do our own research, and we need to also collaborate with scientists. I'm definitely not saying we need to get rid of scientists by any means, but we need to help work with them. And part of the reason they have limitations too. They have limited funding, and sometimes the funding they get may not necessarily be what we want it to go towards, the things we find useful. So my personal opinion is Varroa, 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 and viruses. Both of those things. We need more in those areas, and nutrition is also right up there. Of course, great queen said mice and good nutrition always. And Ian's been up there working, I think, with some of those guys with nutrition, and I think they've been teaching him how to do a thing or two. They haven't taught him how to say pollen correctly yet, but they might be trying. Um, I hope he's still on here. I got some good giggles from Laurel out of that one, I have to say. Yeah, well, Hi-Fi is talking about the state of Florida. I like what the University of Florida is doing down in there. There are some wonderful universities that are doing a lot for beekeeping. However, there are several universities, and I'm going to talk about my state now. And there's several states like my state. I know this, and just be they think, okay, we've got a beekeeping program, we've got our PhDs. All of a sudden, we are set to teach. They're terrible beekeepers. They kill bees all the time, and the information is awful, awful information. If they had to quit their job and make the same amount of money off of bees, they would starve. So there's got to be a balance to both sides. Let's see. But anyways, I got on a little soapbox there, but I just feel like part of the damage that has been done in beekeeping is because we've given up the reins by and large, and like, okay, it's the researcher's job to figure out everything good for us, and we're just going to wait for them to do it. And I think that's a poor attitude. We've got to take as we got to do as much as we can, and that's why I appreciate what Ian's doing up in there, even if it is in Canada. A lot of it translates down into here. All right, let's see. PhD piled higher and deeper sometimes. Yeah, University of Guelph is a nice university. I'd love to visit. Yeah, Humberto is great. Humberto's a great beekeeper too, though. He grew up around bees as a kid. He's told me his dad teases him about now that he's a researcher, it's not he's not the same anymore. He just teases him a little bit. But hey, Yvonne, thanks for being on so much. We always appreciate you up there in East Bernstein, our Kentucky cousin. Have a good night. Let's see. Have you heard or used bee scanning? I've heard of it. I'm skeptical. I'm very skeptical on how well that would work. If you have a lot of mites, maybe, but I mean, what if you have an infestation that's around 1% or lower and it's really low? Are you going to be able to just take a quick scan with that bee scanning and be able to get even close to an alcohol wash count? I don't know. I really want to see a lot more information on that bee scanning thing before I really say much more about it. I have my doubts. But there was some research out of Washington. They were talking about a new fungus that attacks Varroa, and they showed some pictures, and everyone got excited, and I'm excited too. I'd like to see some new headway in that department. And I've reached out to them, and they said that they would like to do a collabor. They said, "Yeah, we could do a collaboration with you on YouTube and talk about it." And all of a sudden, they shut up. And I know that they are busy, and maybe there's some certain things I can't talk about yet. However, a lot of these new products with bee scanning, mushroom things that are going to help save the bees, they disappear. There's no follow through. And I'm not saying maybe it's a bad idea, but it doesn't matter if it works good if it never makes it to the market. We've got to actually make some. The thing has got to actually make some change. Hey, Jeffrey, appreciate that. Virus. I have a theory and think the oregano, or like oregano plant might give the bees extra protection from the virus. It is a selective antibiotic too. And it's possible. I would love, David, to see more research in that. There are some studies done in other countries. However, I would like to see more studies done. I would love to see if we could get some essential oils that, if we mixed into our feeds, could provide some additional relief, gut health for our bees. But likely, it's like with anything, if it does provide some antibiotic properties or whatever it is, you can overdose on anything. So, what is the dosage if that is the case? That's why we have to really be careful with all of this stuff. But we definitely need, and then again, if we have good controls with the mites, chances are the viruses won't be quite as bad. But we do get some virus issues sometimes when there's low mites, because sometimes the viruses mutate a little bit. All right. Just got 80 treatments of Apagard. I am still going to oxalic acid, but was surprised you seem to trust it over the acid. Um, yeah, I've used Apagard a lot. That's one of the reasons I trust it more. It's not a perfect treatment. Neither is oxalic acid, and neither is formic. Formic's hard for me to use because it just gets so hot here. So most of the time I want to treat it, I just can't use it. And the oxalic acid, I used to have to use it so much. I'm not getting out to 300 and something colonies and going out there and doing even 5 rounds in 21 days, which is not enough. But I'm not going to do that. It's too much labor. During that period, we should be extracting honey and making splits and dropping queen cells and making YouTube videos and Hive Life conference stuff. And so I like the Apagard. And actually, one of our videos upcoming will be on the final results of the Apagard on the horizontal hive, and we'll see how that compares with the experimental yard. We'll compare that next to one another. But I did two 50-gram treatments. The experimental yard, well, I did that in the experimental yard, two 50-gram treatments, but also in the horizontal hive, which is just one hive to compare it to. Had a 1.4% or 1.6% infestation rate. I've got it written down. And I did 2 rounds of 50 grams, and we'll see what the wash is. I'll probably do the wash tomorrow after church or something like that. Let's see. Mm. Hey, Cayman, newbie here in Pennsylvania. Should the daily Varroa count seen on the tray be going up presently at day 37 with Apivar? Well, if there's a good bit of mites in there, then it should be going up for a couple reasons. First of all, the Apivar should continue to kill and get a little bit better with time during that prime spot. In my opinion, it does. If it works the way it's supposed to, it should kill right away. But one of the reasons it should be going up is because this time of the year, probably you're not brooding quite as much. I don't know what it's like in Pennsylvania, but I imagine you're probably to slow down in brood reign, so more mites are being exposed to the treatment. So they should be going up. But if you have low mite loads, then you won't. Definitely, if possible, do an alcohol wash after the treatment period and see if it did a good job for you or not. Let's see here. Hank, I'm sorry, man. It's on my list of things to do. I don't know how many times you said that. Miracle missed, miracle missed. I will try to get that in a video. I promise. I just have not had the time. I really haven't. Let's see. Did you see the AI scanner from Australia that worked as a NASA to blast Varroa out of the hives? I have not seen that. If we could develop a laser that could like shoot the bees right off, shoot the mites right off the bees, that would be the coolest technology the world has ever known, short of air conditioning. That would be awesome. Let's see here. But oh man, yeah, Georgia's looking a lot better, Crusher. their offense, if they can keep that offense going, they're going to be tough to beat for sure. That'll be a good game. I wanted to mention again that NT and Tardif next week, October the 2nd, will be giving all kinds of data on overwintering in the Yukon. So we are going to actually cut this short. Not short, it's actually been 2 hours and 54 minutes. I appreciate you all coming on, but we are going to have him on. It's going to be great. Bring your questions. We'll try to get to as many of them as we can. And I'm going to have a lot of my own pre planned questions so we can make sure to talk to him about upper ventilation, trying polystyrene versus just having a foam board on top, wood boxes, all that stuff. And he's experienced it all. So looking forward to that very much. Hey, Hank, talking about ineffective and heat treatments. Well, first of all, I think there's been some supply and demand issues with the companies that are producing the heat treatments, but also there has been some research done by Randy Oliver and others showing that the heat treatments are not working incredibly well. And now, does that mean that it's not something to look into still? I'm not sure about that, but for the expense and the labor and the preliminary stuff that we're starting to see more and more, I'm not sure if it's going to become popular, and maybe it shouldn't. Randy Oliver didn't have some very good things to say at our conference last year about it. It did not yield very good results when he zoomed in last year, or I guess it was this year. Goodness, it's been a long year. Yeah, we got a lot of Aussies on tonight, and they don't have Varroa mites. That is nice. That is really nice. Hey, Greg, thanks for coming on. Look forward to seeing you at the conference. Yep. Look, have a good Sunday, everybody. Where can I find the plans for the John Oliver vaporizer? He has them, Crusher, on B Source, but the problem is like 1,000 comments have been done on that post, and they're really hard to. You can sort through them and find it. I think it's pretty early on in the conversation, but on if you go to B Source and you type John O, it should pull up a lot of information. If you're willing to go through it, you can find the information. But I'm not sure of anywhere where you can just get clear information on how to build your own vaporizer. Hey, Hi-Fi, thanks for coming on again, and Anita and everybody else. A lot of good conversation, good questions tonight. I'm looking forward to winter and having a chance to kind of breathe and get the business straightened out, more efficient. I love winter. It's good to get a break from the things that you love. That way, come February, I'll just be like, I gotta get into my bees. So just like normal. Look forward to seeing you all here in the next few months and at the conference. And thanks for watching our videos. We'll see you next time.